Type is going to introduce the gentleman doing our invocation tonight, right?
Yes. Tonight we have Jarrell Botello. He's a teacher of U.S. history at Kugler Middle School, and he's also the football coach and the head basketball coach. And he's at this time is filling in, helping out as an interim pastor at First Baptist Church of Aztec. So welcome, Jarrell, and thank you for coming tonight. Will everybody please rise?
Father in heaven, we bow our hearts towards you, Lord. We honor you, we praise you, we glorify you, Lord. And Father, we hallow your name, for you are mighty and you are holy. You are the creator of all things in heaven and on earth. And Father, on this day, in our hearts we remember those who we lost. And in the anniversary, Lord, we ask that you bring a special touch to their families, that you bring a peace to their hearts, and bring a peace to the nation as well. This evening, Lord God, as business is conducted here, I ask, Father, for your wisdom to prevail. I ask, Lord, that the gentlemen and the ladies of this room here, Lord, who will make the decisions for this town, for this city, Lord God, what a heavy burden is laid upon them. But in these decisions that have been made, I ask that your wisdom would prevail. I ask that your wisdom would be within them, Lord God, in every decision that they make. I ask, Lord Father, that as they construct a wall of protection around this city for every citizen, from the youngest to the eldest, that, Lord God, they would consider that every citizen is your child, and you consider them special. And I ask, Lord God, for your blessing upon their lives, personally, that you would touch their hearts, their minds, their souls, and their bodies, Lord God, and keep them in great health. I would ask, Lord God, for your blessing upon this evening and the business conducted here, that it would be done in a manner worthy and befitting of your glory and your honor. And all this, Lord God, we pray and we ask of your blessing, and we thank you, Lord, in the name of our precious Lord and our Savior. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Jarrell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, is the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Okay, Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Sliver?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry?
Here.
Commissioner Seitz?
Here.
Commissioner Lewis?
Here.
Commissioner Randall?
Here.
All present?
Okay, once again, thanks for being here, folks. We have a fairly busy agenda, so we'll do our best, to keep things moving along in interests of expediency, but also don't be afraid to, participate as you are here to participate. Our first order of business on the agenda is proclamation for Constitution Week. So I'm going to read the proclamation. Is there anybody that's receiving this, Carla? Or? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign it real quick.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So, proclamation by the City of Aztec. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law, and whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, Victor Snover, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Aztec in the state of New Mexico, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd, 2018 as Constitution Week. And I ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Aztec to be affixed this 28th day of August of the year of our Lord 2018. Signed, yours truly.
This is Dr. the American Revolution, and this is one of the things that we do every year is get proclamations from all the cities for constitutions. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item is a presentation by Once a Day Marketing, I think for the ORI initiative. I'm sorry, I don't have a name on here, so.
Jim.
Mr. Glover is here. Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to present the Outdoor Recreation Industry Initiative to Aztec. I'm thinking we're going to do speed dating. As you indicated, you wanted to try to get through things as quickly as possible. So
Please do what you have to do. That's fine. I don't.
my goal is just to give you a quick overview of what's transpired with respect to the ORI, as we now refer to it. And I also want to let you know that I have tried arch hunting. I've sought out 4, found 2, so I'm batting 500. But I know you have like 295 left, so you'll be seeing a lot of me in your neighborhood. So let's see how this works, if we can take you through this. Kind of bleeding off the screen a little bit. But this whole initiative, my partner Marianne Tenenbaum, Marianne, would you raise your hand? We're the original consultants that developed the Jolt Your Journey brand for Farmington about 5 years ago. So hopefully you've heard about that. And through that relationship with Farmington, they said, you know, we want you to help guide us on this outdoor recreation industry initiative. It might be nice to complement oil and gas. And imagine if we had 2 booming industries at one time, that would be pretty exciting. So it sort of came out of the brand of Farmington, which is all about energizing the life journey of outdoor lovers and active families. So if you're going to make a claim like that to your community, wouldn't it be nice to have a complementary outdoor recreation industry that aligns with your brand? So I wanted to quickly give you an overview of just how big the outdoor recreation industry is, because it's almost mind-boggling if you have not seen these numbers. So let's take a look first at the amount of money that's spent in the industry. It's $887 billion industry in the United States annually. That's a pretty good-sized number. And it employs 7.6 million people. And a lot of tax revenue is generated for federal and state and local governments through outdoor recreation. But what does that mean with respect to the context? So let's take a look. When you look at the graph of outdoor recreation in the United States, the 3 on the right are financial services and health services, and the orange one right there, that is the size of outdoor recreation. It is the 4th largest industry in the United States. Way over on the left, the smaller one over there, is that thing called oil and gas. About 1/3 of the size of the outdoor recreation industry in the United States. And if you think about it, San Juan County, we've been hanging our hat on that industry. Now we have the opportunity to be a part of an industry that's 3 times larger. And then that 7.6 million jobs, relative to other industries, it's the #1 employer of all jobs in the United States.
Wow.
So more people are employed in outdoor recreation than any other industry in the United States. So it's kind of a cool thing if you think about it. When you look at the types of activities that have been identified by the Outdoor Industry Association, which is the national association that we are now members of, that's aware of what we're doing in San Juan County, there are 10 different places that people make their livelihood in outdoor recreation. And it's nice to know that all of these exist in our area. So it's not like Des Moines, where maybe they're trying to figure out how to do skiing and some of these other things. We have these things in our neighborhood. So that bodes well as you're trying to build this industry. Next, when you take a look at where the most activity is on a national level, California, West Coast, they beat us. They have an ocean. We had one 300 million years ago, but we let ours dry up. But since that time, we are now #2 in the United States with respect to outdoor recreation industry. So our neighboring states, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, they've been doing quite well in outdoor recreation. And New Mexico is kind of slow coming along, but we have the same amenities and assets if you think about it. I look at these pictures back here. You guys have already been talking outdoor recreation for a while. So now let's just take a look at our state again. $9.9 billion is generated in outdoor recreation state of New Mexico, 99,000 jobs. And it's kind of hard to see, it's a little off the screen on the left, but almost 3 times as many jobs in outdoor recreation industry in New Mexico as oil and gas. So again, more people employed, and a lot of money being generated tax revenue-wise. But how does that relate to our neighbors? Well, let's take a quick look. So when you look at the other states, so there's our numbers, 9.9, 2.8, and so forth going across. Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma are all doing better than us. And I know many of you probably met Warren Unsicker from Forsets, and I joke with Warren, I don't know anything in Oklahoma, but they're still kicking our butt. So how is it that Oklahoma can be generating more revenue in outdoor recreation than New Mexico, and we know we have greater assets than Oklahoma does? So to me, that says that we are missing the boat, that we have opportunities. And also, we have a history of a lot of high-paying jobs in the oil and gas industry. But as you look at the supply chain for the idea of generating products and then moving them through production and then getting them out the door, likewise, similar to oil and gas, these are high-paying jobs. So again, if we're going to be attracting outdoor recreation businesses to our area, these will be jobs that will be paying at the same level as oil and gas, which I think is important since we sort of have that history of paying people that kind of amount of money when things are booming around here. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on the national level. Ogden, Utah, I don't know if you've been to Ogden, but Ogden, back in 2002, following the Winter Olympics, decided that they needed to spur economic development there. They had the couple of venues for the Winter Olympics there, and all these people were running around town in Ogden, and then they went away after the Olympics, and people like yourselves were sitting around going, now what do we do? And they go, well, we have this great backyard of outdoor amenities. Maybe we should think about starting an outdoor recreation industry. So since that time, 2012 to date, 16 years, they have become the Silicon Valley of outdoor recreation manufacturing. I'm sure many of you recognize those brands there. Those have all been recruited to Ogden and had the opportunity a few months ago to be with the mayor of Ogden, and basically like us sitting here in San Juan County going, we didn't know what we needed to do, but we figured it out. And we were able to attract a few companies, and that brought a few more. So back in February of 2017, Marianne and I were hired to do a feasibility study as to whether or not it made sense to bring outdoor recreation to our area. And we looked at a variety of things, the amenities, the activities, the providers, the gaps. And we came back to the city of Farmington, and we said, you know, we do have this opportunity. We have everything that we need. We just have to make it formal, and we have to put our heads together and move together with respect to a targeted strategic plan. And so we presented that in February of last year, and that's when we were then hired to basically start initiating the Outdoor Recreation Industry Initiative. So there you go, Outdoor Recreation Industry Initiative. It's got 2 sides to it. I wanted to make that clear what it is. On the one side, referring to the tagline there, Nature's Playground, we are trying to say this initiative is going to build more experiences and offerings related to outdoor recreation as you have here, like your Alien Trail and your arches. How easy are we making it for people to come into our community and have a great experience? Because we know if we have a great experience, we tell a few friends. We know if we have a bad experience, we tell millions of people we don't even know through social media. So part of it is saying, hey, let's really shore up what we've got here, and then let's just tell everybody about it. And on the other side, Nature's Proving Ground, the other part of the brand line is saying, if you have a widget that you're manufacturing outdoor recreation, you can test it here easily. You can go out to our rivers, you can go to our trails, whatever it is, running shoes, mountain bikes, kayaks, and we know Jack's Plastic Welding is in town here. They've been doing that for 20 years, and Earl and his company have been a nice part of this initiative since day one. So recently, a few of us from the initiative went down to Las Cruces. Senator Jeff Steinborn down there held what was called the Outdoor Economics Conference in May in Las Cruces, and that picture, it's kind of compelling because the room was filled. 30 communities were there, and many of the leaders from other states' outdoor recreation programs were there to share with us that we want to partner with the West to make outdoor recreation a priority for the region. So we had a lot of conversations about public land use and so forth, but what was interesting, they were talking about developing an outdoor recreation industry for the state of New Mexico at this level, and already Ori at our neighborhood we're in the weeds doing it for 18 months. So we are, as we speak right now, ahead of anybody else in the state of New Mexico with respect to driving outdoor recreation over everybody else. And one of the initiatives that came out of this meeting was there's going to be at the Roundhouse this coming year, hopefully an attempt to bring outdoor recreation officially as an office to the state of New Mexico, similar to what other states have been doing. And I think right now 7 or 8 states in the United States have official departments around outdoor recreation. And Senator Steinborn is going to be bringing that proclamation to the legislators. So what we've done with respect to the task force, we've sort of broken it down into 4 areas. One of them is infrastructure. It's been nice to have Ed and other people attending these meetings to talk about how San Juan County and Kirtland and Bloomfield and Farmington and Aztec can work together to create outdoor recreation infrastructure that will attract people. Business and development is all about, can we recruit businesses? Can we take care of our existing businesses that are already here, such as Jack's Plastic Welding or 505 Cycles in Farmington, Mountain Bike Shop? Or can we start new ones at our business incubators, such as San Juan County and so forth? Next is partnerships and funding. That is, can we create partnerships? And one of the things we've already done, thanks to T. Greg Marion, we've had meetings with the oil and gas industry, because to us that's an important part of our legacy and an important part of our partnership moving forward, to say to the rest of the nation is that we've figured out a solution of how to partner with oil and gas to develop our outdoor recreation industry. So they are a part of what we're doing, not at the other end of the continuum. And then branding and marketing is all about letting the rest of the country know that we are in fact open for outdoor recreation business. And it's really nice because the Outdoor Industry Association, as I mentioned, they are the gurus across the nation, just reached out to Ori, and they are now doing a national story about the efforts in the region to build outdoor recreation. They've only done 2 others in the country. One of them's on Grand Junction, and now Wyoming, and then us. So we're already at the national level getting attention of a community that's trying to migrate from oil and gas into outdoor recreation. So resolutions have already been passed by Farmington, by San Juan County to support the outdoor recreation industry. We presented a few weeks ago to Bloomfield, and they asked for these same documents. We will share them with you, and we hope in the future that you will step up and say, yeah, we're part of this as well. Not only can you say you're excited about it for your own city, but you can support the statewide initiative if you believe in an outdoor recreation department within the state of New Mexico as well. And here are some of the accomplishments. We've been having community meetings. We've been doing outreach such as this. There are new outdoor recreation businesses being formed, doing OHV tours, renting mountain bikes, and refurbishing boats. So it's kind of cool to see these small entrepreneurs getting on board. We've been talking to the commercial realtors. It's kind of funny when you think about it, and hopefully you'll do an inventory of the properties that you have available for outdoor gear manufacturing. But marijuana being manufactured in Colorado, our neighbor, is jacking up the prices of commercial space. We're right next door, and we have commercial space in abundance here in San Juan County, much cheaper than they're offering up there. So that will be another thing to entice some of those Colorado companies that are getting squeezed out because of that other industry that's emerging there. So there's a lot of exciting things going on here. Recently we attended what's called the Outdoor Retailer Show as well. And that is the largest show in the nation. We had representation there. We've gone now 3 times, and we're starting to let these businesses know that you can make your products in America in a place called Farmington and San Juan County, and hopefully Aztec. And then Catalyst Fund is kind of exciting. We just got a letter yesterday from Sun Mountain Capital, which is in charge of the Catalyst Fund. It's a $20 million venture fund that invests in businesses in New Mexico, and they are now aware of Ori. We got a letter yesterday saying that they are interested in considering possibly creating a venture fund centered around investing in the startups of outdoor recreation businesses. So how cool would that be if we're trying to attract a business to our region and say, oh, by the way, we've got a venture fund that can help you get off the ground. I think that's very exciting. So you recently heard about the 1/4% tax. We were with the mayor and city manager of Farmington today, community transformation and economic diversification, geared towards supporting Ori and others, but that will allow money to be put into the hopper to specifically embrace the growth of outdoor recreation opportunities in our region. And again, as I said, what differentiates Ori from other places in the country is that we are already working in partnership with oil and gas and the BLM to develop our outdoor recreation industry. We have so much public land, and it was funny, that big conference down in Las Cruces all about how can we use public land to better outdoor recreation. There were no public land administrators there. we already have the BLM sitting in our meetings with us. So it's kind of exciting. So we're well on our way to establishing Ori as being nature's playground, nature's proving ground. So there are some companies out there. You've probably heard of Smart Wool. They started up in Steamboat Springs. You've heard of Osprey. They're just in Cortez. And it's interesting, their history shows that at one point in time before they took manufacturing offshore, they had 130 people there manufacturing backpacks for Osprey. BTI is out of Santa Fe, Bicycle Technologies International. They have a huge 50,000 square foot facility, and they distribute mountain bike and road bike parts across the country. Taos Mountain Energy Bar, have anybody had one of those? I think, what are they, $50 a bar? I don't know. But what's interesting about Taos Mountain Energy Bar is they're not manufactured in Taos. They're actually manufactured in Cuesta. So I'm saying if Cuesta can do it, so can we, right? And then lastly, Jack's Plastic Welding, and that's our poster child. You have right now the one definitive outdoor recreation manufacturing company in this area, and Jack's has done a good job of putting themselves on the national map as well. Everybody knows Jack's out there on the national scene. Now I wanted to share this with you because a company called Rocky Mountains just announced that after being in Boulder for 25 years, they employ 12 people and they make bike racks for bicycles. Because they cannot get the quality of life they're seeking in Boulder, they're moving west to Grand Junction. And if Boulder can't provide a quality of life, I'm thinking that we in this area can. Because there's a lot of people, whether it be on the California, you come here, you know it, you're here because you love this area. All we have to do through this effort is find like-minded people that love what you love and let them know we're open for business. So that's kind of what this whole initiative is all about. And what's fun is those are the kinds of people this initiative will attract. And I know every community in San Juan County wants to attract vibrant, young, hip people to our community rather than the migration away, bring them in. And what's really fun, and it was Dave Epic, if you know Dave Epic, pointing this out, is that not only is the outdoor recreation industry going to bolster the economy with respect to outdoor recreation, but if you notice, about every other person has a cast on their leg or foot. So he also says that it's going to increase health care here as well. So they'll both go up at the same time. But those are, in fact, the kinds of people that this industry will attract. And ending up here, a few of the things here. So we enhance our own quality of life, as we could see by doing things related to benefiting outdoor recreation. And part of the infrastructure committee that we've talked about, they've identified $25 million of money that's being spent or will be spent in the near term regionally about outdoor recreation. So I talked about more recreation offerings, better outdoor experiences, more visitors and businesses coming here, and then creating new jobs and companies. And how you guys can get involved in the future. Embrace Ori, which I'm glad. I appreciate the invitation tonight to share that with you. We have task force. We have work groups moving forward. We hope to see Aztec a part of that. Promoting Ori in any way that you want. And this is my invitation to you. Now that you have an understanding of what it is, you can get behind it any way you want. Because you saw that Ori, it says nature's playground, nature's proving ground. It's not Farmington, it's not anybody. It's just the regions, and it's available for you to get behind and do the kinds of things. We would love to work with you in the future to make that happen. So support Ori and then support any initiatives coming forward as well, and that's what we're asking. And that's it. So I will take questions, Mayor, Commissioners, on anything you might have learned or want to discuss about Ori before you move on to your next item.
I don't have any specific questions right now, but there's all kinds of things racing through my brain that I would like to maybe, through the city manager or somebody to sit down and chat with you over coffee or something like that.
We would love to do that. We come back and we anticipate being in the area for a while, so we will make those arrangements and we will discuss it further with you. We would love to talk in greater detail.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Our next item is agenda approval. If there are any items that do not meet the approval for being heard on this evening's agenda, now is the time to remove those items.
Mayor, move to approve this evening's agenda with the exception of item E from consent. It being pulled.
We're not there yet.
They want to pull it from the agenda.
Okay.
Right?
You want
Yes.
to pull it all together. So
And you
we
wanted to
it down.
pull.
Well, I'll pull the other one
Right.
during
That was from
consent.
Okay.
E needs to be pulled from the
Right.
agenda.
From the
Correct.
complete.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda with the exception of item E. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. All right. Next up is citizen recognition. We have, do we have any? Is there anybody? I'm sorry. Do we have any citizen recognition from anybody? I'm sorry, I'm thinking citizen input, my mistake.
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I don't really have any citizen recognition per se. I just want to kind of point out, I just want to bring up the fact that we have a couple of new businesses kicking off today and tomorrow. I got an email from Mike Pascal that they're going to be opening up for lunch tomorrow at the new 550, I'm not exactly sure what he's calling it. I think it's 550 Brewery and Pizza Parlor. So they're going to be serving lunch tomorrow. So go down and check out the pizza and give them your feedback. And just today, our newest barber shop, Bare Knuckles Barber Shop, opened for business, and I was lucky enough to be the very first guy to get a nice fresh haircut. So I encourage you to at least check them out, spend your money there, and you know, see how things are going. So that's all I have. Are you checking my haircut? I think you did a pretty good job. Okay, so next is employee recognition.
Not true employees, but contract employees. I'd like to welcome our new legal staff, Nikki Unsinger and Gary Risley. This is their first night with us, so welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Items placed on the consent agenda will be voted upon with one motion. If there are any items that need to be pulled for further discussion, they will be discussed under items from consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I'd like to
ma'am.
pull item F just for some clarification.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anything else? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item F being pulled for further discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so we are now down to items from consent agenda. Item 12, we're going to discuss item F, NMDOT control number C5142088, East Aztec Arterial Funding Agreement. Commissioner Sipe, you wanted to?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, I did get an answer from Steve, from Kathy, about the reason for the difference in the numbers. Originally, we had $3,819,775, and now it's down. It's at $3,525,703. That's a mouthful. Sorry. And just wanted to make sure why the difference. And it was explained to me that we've already used a portion of that money for Phase 1B. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood why that difference, because that kind of stood out to me. So just wanted to clarify that for anybody. So before we voted on it.
Okay.
So, and we still have to go through it still has to go through the legislative process, even though DOT is doing this with us, or we're secure.
Specific to this funding, this is the funding that was reappropriated by the legislature with the 2018 legislature.
Right.
DOT, because of what the legislature did was extend the reversion date, which required DOT to execute a new agreement because it had the old reversion date. So when they did it, it was with what the balance of the funding was with the new reversion date. Now we do have a second funding from the legislature that we're going to have to do the same thing with.
Okay.
With the 2019 legislature, we're going to have to ask them to reappropriate that to again extend that that reversion date so that we'll have it available for the construction.
I thought that was true, but just
Right.
making sure that.
Yeah, it has to go through the legislature first, and then we'll have the same thing, that we'll have another agreement from DOT, assuming the legislature reappropriates.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
What's the total of that one? That's the big one, right?
No, this was the big one. You caught me off guard.
Okay, I was just curious. Just trying to think of how much money we're getting.
It's a little bit, that one's a little bit over $1 million. I'm
Okay.
thinking it was 1.5, and again, have done similar so that we could show activity on that funding. A portion of that was also used for Phase 1B.
Awesome, cool, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready for a motion?
Anybody have any other questions, or? Okay. Well, in that case, I would entertain a motion for item F off the consent agenda, NMDOT control number C5142088 East Aztec Arterial Funding Agreement.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve NMDOT Fund 89200 Capital Appropriation Project Control Number C5142088.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I can just do I don't have to do a roll call, right? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Okay, now we are on citizens input. I apologize for the gaffe a second ago. Do we have anybody signed up? No? Oh, okay. So Mr. Glover signed up. So there isn't anybody that signed up for citizens input. So we're going to go ahead and move right into business items on the agenda. There's one business item, item A, final adoption of ordinance 2018-482 municipal gross receipts tax, and ordinance amending chapter 27, article 1, gross receipts tax.
Mayor and Commission, this item was presented before the Commission as an intent to adopt with the meeting on August 14th. Prior to the motion for that action, the ordinance was changed to increase the gross receipts by 1/4 of 1% or 0.25%, maintaining that it would go to general purposes, meaning it's not going to be specified for any specific use. And the effective date, if it's approved and submitted to Tax and Rev by September 30th, would be an effective date of January 1st. At the time, or to my knowledge, we haven't received any comments on this item, so I stand for questions. Comments.
Mr. Mayor, I
Please.
have a couple of questions and comments, I guess. I hadn't received anything pro or con until today. I think we all got the email
Right.
from Taime Kavaka. And, but before I get into that, I was wondering what would happen if we tabled this till the next meeting in order to, I don't know, search out a little bit more. I take responsibility for not bringing this to the EDAB board. I don't know why it didn't even dawn on me that we should have a discussion with them. I think because things have happened kind of fast, and they feel, I know some members of the EDAB board feel like that they should have been at least been vetted through our Economic Development Board before we did this, and we have not had an opportunity to do that. Also, the other thing for me that maybe wait for one more meeting, well, let me ask first, is that a possibility, or does that throw us way off the timeline?
If the timeline is determined by what the Commission's desire is when we would want this rate to be effective. If we want a rate to be effective by January 1st, we can't wait to take final action on this item until that last meeting in September, because there isn't sufficient time to allow the public to protest and also to get a certified copy of the ordinance to Santa Fe by the deadline. If commission wanted to delay action tonight and still have a January 1st effective date, would require a special commission meeting no later than Tuesday next week, which would not work with EDAB.
Right.
Because the meeting, I don't believe, is until next
till the next-
Thursday.
right,
Or
right.
the following Thursday.
Not this Thursday, but the next one.
Right. So, but that's what's driving this timeline, is that January 1st effective date. If commission wants to slow this down and vet it more with the public, then what we would be looking at is a July 1st effective date. And then we would have until February before something would have to be adopted and submitted to Santa Fe.
Okay. My concern is that it's happening, it seems to be happening really fast. I would ask about because I thought it had to be 45 days from intent to final adoption anyway, but it doesn't. And then just, I don't know, maybe give the public a little more time to at least voice their opinion. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything. I'll throw out the elephant in the room, okay? From Ms. Kavaka's email and the statement that was made that we needed to do this because of mismanagement of funds, that somebody had been telling business owners, that a commissioner had been telling business owners that we were having to do this because of a mismanagement of funds, which is so far from the truth that it blew my mind, and it really ticked me off, to be honest. So, because that's not the truth. This bust has lasted longer than anybody predicted that it would last.
Correct.
In our GRT, and had we not aggressively started cutting down our budgets and stuff, 5 years ago?
Correct.
Or over, then we would have had to take this action a whole lot sooner than now.
Correct.
So I just don't know if the perceptions, I hate that perception's out there for one thing, because couldn't be farther from the truth, and so I don't know, that's just my 2 cents worth.
Respectfully, if I could kind of chime in a little bit, excuse me. I'm going to go on the assumption that it's a previous commissioner. I can't imagine, and I'm not asking. I'm not trying to get down that rabbit hole. But I read that email as well, and I am certain, just based on my limited experience with the commission, that it hasn't been because of mismanagement of funds. And that's not the first time I've heard those sorts of things, leading up to the election.
Oh, yeah.
Being involved, coming to meetings, being involved in politics outside of the city of Aztec. You hear that kind of stuff on a fairly regular basis, unfortunately. And I'm of the opinion, and I'm not saying this is a blanket statement about everything that we do, but I'm of the opinion that we gave adequate time for folks to weigh in on this. And if they had an issue, the day of is kind of closing the door after the horses are already out, so to speak.
I understand that.
And I'm a little unclear, maybe you can clarify a little further about what EDAB's concerns are, because the city of Farmington is doing the exact same thing that we're doing. Actually, they're doing a larger increase than we are.
Which was another issue in the email today, is that, we're doing it, but Farmington did just approve a larger increase than what we're doing. And so, but I think, Stephen, you may jump in here. I think EDAB's concern was that that's partly their function, and that we hadn't even discussed it during an EDAB meeting. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Share the mic.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commission. So from a few board members, the concern from EDAB was, at the time of the EDAB meeting, there wasn't a exact number of what the tax percentage was going to be. And so at that last commission meeting, it went from the proposal of a tax increase, and then it was, altered to let's go kick it up a notch. And so there was not enough time to put it in an EDAB meeting for the agenda, the upcoming EDAB meeting, to the commission to where we are now. And so as a result, there is a few board members that felt first and foremost that if there was going to be a tax increase, that they would have been asked to basically vet this item. So that's the sentiment, at least from a few board members, that, well, I'll just put it this way. Why didn't you ask them? Okay? Not to say that it's that you had to, it was a wrong path, but that's the sentiment. Because a tax increase does have an effect on economic development. Doesn't mean it's going to affect it negatively. It may affect it positively. I know Forstead gave a presentation at Farmington, and they spoke in favor of it. But theirs is a little different than ours. They allocated the tax increase to specific economic development funds. Ours is different. So that said, that's the sentiment of EDAB, at least from a few board members at this current moment.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify a little bit, because I did talk with Sally Burbridge from EDAB, and yes, Forstead did come up and speak forward to the percentage that was directed towards economic development, but they kind of were mute on the rest of the increase. Does that make sense? So they, specifically the one that was for EDAB, and of course we all know that we decided to do it different because that way we could use it wherever we needed it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just for the sake of clarity for everyone out in the audience, as I knock everything over, EDAB stands for Economic Development Advisory Board. So, okay, just so people not everyone may know that. A lot of acronyms get thrown out.
It's like the military, we have a lot of acronyms, and we always assume that people know what they mean, so I apologize for that too.
If I might add to that, when I was looking at this again the other night when we're talking about reading on it, it strikes me that we have not, the city of Aztec has not raised taxes since 2004. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anybody who pays the same price for something today that they did in 2004, but if you do, would you let me know what it is, because I'd like to get some. It's just something we would have to look at anyway. Prices have gone up, our economy has faltered, and we need to do something. Mm-hmm. So I understand where you're coming from too, and why you'd think about the delay. So,
but if it's going to throw us off, then I mean I'm fine with not. I just wanted to for discussion purposes to throw these things out there. That
no, it's important to have this conversation.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I watched the information that was provided. That Farmington was going to choose 0.25% for economic development. I just felt comfortable that the decision that we were making left us open, mm-hmm. and we are all very interested in economic development.
Of course.
And I can see a portion of that supporting the Economic Development Board, and that we will gladly listen to anything that they bring for us, and it'll give us more cash in the bank to consider economic development. So that's why I've been comfortable. I've been approached by one person concerned about the increase. I explained the need based upon 10 years of gross receipts taxes decreasing, and we have limited opportunities for rebuilding our revenue and being able to continue to provide services to support our staff. And so that has been my impetus to approve this, and in no way to reflect upon a bad commission decision, but history. We've had 10 years mm-hmm. of struggle and having to use past revenues to keep things going, and now we've got to figure out ways to continue. So
exactly.
That's where I am.
And that's exactly the people that I have talked to. They weren't questioning one way or the other, but they were asking, and so that's exactly what I told them. Same thing you just said. It's like, this has lasted longer.
We don't want to do
We've
this.
Got to, yeah, we have to pay it same as everybody else.
Exactly.
And if I could just interject really quick, and then we'll move on. And this is no disrespect to anybody on the development board, the advisory board, and I would have to go back and do a little homework, but it's been at least 6 weeks since we workshopped this, because we didn't discuss it last meeting, and we voted on the intent a month ago.
On the August 5th, 14th,
Right.
we had workshopped it, but we...
So we workshopped it 6 weeks ago. We had discussed it at least casually and, with the intent of bringing it up at some point right after the election. So I understand that folks like to be in the loop, but I also, it's not commission's sole responsibility to be the only ones kind of at all of the rooftops shouting that we have this coming up. At some point, members have to take, members of boards, members of the community have to take on their responsibility and get involved and be like, hey, what's going on with this? It was in the paper. I mean, it's been out there, I guess. So I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I am sensitive to the fact that, things slip by sometimes. We're all guilty of that, and we're like, hey, how did that happen? How come we didn't know? But generally, you could point back to the fact that, in my case anyway, it's because I didn't do enough homework or I wasn't kind of awake enough to see what was going on. And with that said, I personally am not in favor of moving this, pushing this down the road. So that's just where I stand personally. But, I'm only one vote. So, does anybody else have any discussion or anything? Mr. Randall, anything? Okay. I guess that's it, Kathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Hearing no other considerations or objections or input, I will entertain a motion on business item A.
I move to approve the final adoption of ordinance 2018-482 municipal gross receipts tax and ordinance amending Chapter 27, Article 1, gross receipts taxes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
Aye.
Commissioner Syke,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now, we haven't done one of these for a little while, so bear with me, folks. If you see me looking over at the table, that's for a little bit of guidance, but we are getting ready to move into item 15, land use hearings. There are 4 land use hearing items on tonight's agenda, and I have a little bit of a kind of a script, I guess, for lack of a better term, to read, so please, like I said, bear with me. Okay. The following hearing procedure is for all hearings on tonight's agenda. A land use hearing registration form is located on the clerk's table for those who wish to receive a copy of the results from this hearing. You must provide your full name and current mailing address in order to receive a copy of the land use hearing order. If you wish to testify and provide comment on the matter at issue, you must register with the clerk on the land use hearing registration form and be sworn in with staff, the applicant, identified parties, witnesses, and interested persons. Identified by the parties and/or interested persons wishing to testify as indicated on the land use hearing registration form. Okay, we are now moving into the land use hearing part of this meeting. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the City of Aztec Commissioners to hear any of the hearings on tonight's agenda? If so, please state the challenge at this time. Seeing none. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal biases to be declared by a commission member? If so, please state the biases or conflicts at this time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
during the second land use hearing, I will recuse myself and go down as a citizen because it's my variance that's requested.
And thank you. And I am going to also, I guess, stand aside or recuse myself. It's the first one, correct, Mr. Spadra? On the first one, because I happen to own property adjacent to, within the area of the first land use hearing. So just for, expediency and transparency, I'm just going to remove myself from it as well. Anybody else? Any other? Okay. Okay. Item 3, have there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matters that a commission member needs to declare? If so, please state the ex parte contacts at this time. Chair checks with the panel. I didn't need to read that. That's me. And again, I'm just going to refer back to the first item because prior to myself being elected to City Commission, the members that are requesting for item A's variance, had given some information and kind of checked with us basically. So I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself from that as well. So I have kind of a possible conflict. Okay. So with that said, will staff, the applicants, parties identified by commission, all witnesses, and any interested persons wishing to testify regarding variance 18-02, variance 18-03, zone change 18-03, and conditional use permit 18-03, please stand and raise your right hand. So everybody that's involved tonight, please. Even if you're planning to testify or whatever, just to kind of cover all our bases. All right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Yes, affirmative. Shake your head. I do. Thank you. All right. Please be seated. Okay. Under order of presentations, the staff will summarize the staff report to the extent necessary to enable those present to understand the issues before the commissioners. The commission members may ask questions of staff, cross-examination by applicant and parties. The applicant, to include their witness or witnesses, have up to 15 minutes. The commission members may ask questions of the applicant. Cross-examination by staff and parties. Witnesses may be cross-examined but do not have the authority to cross-examine. So if you're a witness to this, you may be cross-examined, but you don't have the authority to cross-examine, okay? And then parties, to include their witness or witnesses, 10 minutes for each party. The commission members may ask questions of the parties. Cross-examination by staff and applicant. Witnesses may be cross-examined, but again, do not have the authority to cross-examine. And then interested persons. So this is the order that it will go, and we can go back through this if there's any questions. Interested persons have 5 minutes each, and again, the commission members may ask questions of those interested persons, and again, cross-examination by staff, applicant, and parties, and these interested persons may be cross-examined, but again, may not cross-examine others. And then we will close the hearing. Okay? So, let's start with item A, variance 18-02, a variance to reduce the dimensional standards and setback requirements in the R2 single-family residential zoning district. Carla, do I just kind of be quiet, or do I need to get off of here? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Oh, so I guess you'll run this part.
So good evening, City Commission. There's a seat there. So variance 1802 is a request by Brian and Stacy Haggerty to reduce the lot size in an R2 district along with setback requirements. Mr. Haggerty has indicated that they intend to subdivide their property at 209 East Blanco and 200 North Church Street. This is right here. There's 2 residential dwelling units / 1 business on this one lot. And the intent is to split it right down the middle between the 2 houses. Now, the R2 district requires a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. So should they split the lot, one of the lots is 2,000 square feet, or a little over 2,000 square feet. That would not meet the subdivision requirements of the R2 district. This is the house they intend to split off. This is 209 East Blanco. Now, in the early 2000s, the applicant requested a land use hearing to actually build this structure because it did not meet the setbacks of the time. And that was granted. In addition, I believe it was in early 2012, there was a special use to have a business run out of here. That was also approved. So this request would look like this. This is a survey where the lot line would come through right here. Now, the other part of that wasn't in the original land use hearing in the early 2000s is this separation from the land use code needs to be 7.5 feet as a setback because it's a two-story structure. This is reducing it to 5. And in addition, the lot is just over 2,000. Now, staff looked at the variance application, went through a slew of criteria items. Was it a minimum easing of the code? Well, 2,000 square feet from 5,000, not necessarily. Is this a matter of convenience? In part, yes, they are requesting it. This wasn't anything special with the land. They are requesting to split it. Is it going to be detrimental to the neighborhood and to the area? Staff doesn't feel that is the case at all. In fact, what it would do is open up 2 parcels to be potentially sold off, which would increase the demand of houses in Aztec, which in theory would reduce the price. We know we have an affordable housing issue in Aztec, and staff feels that that would contribute to affordability. And because staff does not feel that this is going to be detrimental to the area, to the community, and to the city, staff is recommending approval. And here is to give you an idea of the other house on the lot. With that, I will stand for questions in regards to this land use item.
Just ask if there's any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments about this piece of property?
For Stephen. Questions for Stephen.
For Stephen?
So, Commissioner, so next, the applicant will come up and present.
Okay.
And then we'll get into any affected parties or anybody outside of the 100 feet that was sent certified letters. If they have any questions, concerns, are they for, are they against?
Okay. So, Brian and Stacy Haggerty, would you like to? Yeah. That's Hampton.
Good evening.
Okay.
My name is Paul Martin. I'm principal engineer for Security Engineering that prepared the drawing that you're looking at. Can you all hear me okay?
You might
Get
pull it
late.
up just a
Pull your
little
mic up
bit.
a bit. There you go.
There.
That's what the man said. Yes, sir. It's nice to see you all. I know 2 of you, probably 3 or 4 of you, but I haven't been here a long time. The Haggertys wish to split their lot. We've looked at it. We worked with staff and came up with them having to be able to make the recommendation for approval. So I'm here basically to represent them and answer any questions from the engineering and survey portion that of the requirements. And they will fulfill the requirements as provided by staff for the splitting of the property. But this is the first step in the subdivision of the property. So we will go back and that will have to be resurveyed and made into a plat and filed with the county seat and for the splitting of the property.
Would you repeat your name again, sir?
Paul Martin.
Paul Martin, okay.
Yeah.
We have you down here. Okay. Does,
I signed the paper.
Yeah.
yes, you did.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't have any questions other than just the fact that this is the most complete application I've ever seen.
I agree, I agree. It was incredibly detailed and thorough.
Yes, it was. So
Yes.
Thank you very much.
commend you guys on that, and I mean, yeah, I really have no questions at all.
Yeah.
on my own. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess if you have any questions for the Haggertys,
Right.
they're available.
Does it, are there any questions for the Haggertys?
No.
We were trying to answer all the questions in the
Yeah.
packet.
I think you did,
story.
and it's one of the loveliest properties in the neighborhood, so I'd buy it in a minute.
Down the road.
Is that an offer?
I've got one myself.
Yeah, I know.
So-
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Okay. I'd like, any other discussion? I'd like to,
Let me hit script right there. Sorry.
thanks.
Okay, so, yeah, parties, we did that, so, yeah, and no interested persons,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, well, we have an interested party.
Yes, we do.
Did you want to say any additional? You're good? Okay. Okay.
Okay, so then, I think we're ready to close testimony. So,
So we'll close this hearing to
close
any-
testimony,
to testimony?
and the commission may discuss the item among themselves.
Okay.
So, did you guys hear that? Sorry, I'm coaching here.
That's okay.
So we are closing the hearing to all testimony at this point, and then commission can discuss the issue right now amongst themselves before a motion is made. So, let's just ask if they have any discussion.
One quick comment. I've walked past that property many times over the years, and it's always been it's beautiful property. So I don't see any problem with any of this. So.
There's no other comments or
Okay.
discussion? Then you'll close
We'll
commission-
close the
commission discussion.
commission discussion and entertain a motion to, for a,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, entertain a motion.
we'll entertain a motion.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve petition VAR 18-02, a request from Brian and Stacy Hegarty for a variance to reduce the dimensional standards and setback requirements in R2 multifamily residential zoning district at 209 Blanco and 200 North Church Avenue in Aztec, New Mexico. Tax ID R0000357 and accepting findings of fact 1 through 6.
Second.
Carla, would you like to call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
Aye.
Commissioner Sykes,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0.
Musical chairs.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thanks for bearing with us, folks. It's a little bit of a unique circumstance here. It's a little harder than it looks. Let's move on to item B under land use hearings, variance 18-03, a variance to exceed the height requirement of 12 feet for the storage of a recreational vehicle carport and to build an accessory structure in a vacant lot abutting residence at 705 Little Rabbit Drive, Aztec, New Mexico. Okay, Mr. Saavedra.
Mayor. So variance 1803 is a request to exceed the height limitations / requirements of a RV carport within the single-family residential dwelling district. As most of the commission is aware, we have a 12-foot requirement for an RV car shed. Unfortunately, most RV carports do not fit in a 12-foot carport. Therefore, this request is coming forward to seek a variance for a 17.6 RV carport. The site will be approximately where this green dot is at. The applicants are Rodney and Sherry, Ron, I stand correct, Ron and Sherry Syke. They live at 705 Rabbit Drive. The zoning district is R1, surrounded by R1. Now, Cocopelli and some other neighborhoods throughout Aztec, we've seen carports that exceed the 12-foot requirements, either through variance, either through error, either through, well, basically didn't get a permit for it. City staff is working to change the ordinance because we realize this is an issue. We do not want to continue having variance after variance. This is the subject property. This is a street view. This is the current RV. And the applicant has stated her request is to protect her investment. This is the other side of the street. This is actually, now we received a rendering from the applicant, but this by and large is what it will look like. This is actually in Cocopelli as well. This is on the other side of the street, Tanjagut. And this is just to basically give you an idea of what the carport will look like with the given height. The RV, if it was 12 feet, well, basically it would be cut off right there. Staff goes through every application, the criteria set forth. Is this a matter of convenience? Well, to some extent. Is it a hardship? It is, because if you look at RV carports, the code is just not up to date. Is this a minimum easing of the code? Staff feels it is and is recommending approval for the request. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Okay. Anybody up here have any questions for Mr. Saavedra?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Any cross-examination by Commissioner, by Mrs. Sipe?
No.
Okay. Okay, so next would be the applicant to include any witnesses. You have up to 15 minutes.
I think he explained it very well.
Unless we, well, if you wouldn't mind, just quickly, I don't anticipate any questions, but just in case.
Sure.
Are there any questions or any examination of the applicant? I have none. Okay.
I can't think of anything good.
Okay.
Oh, just so you know, I did talk to quite a few of my neighbors, and none of them, I didn't get around to all of them, but I talked to quite a few of them, and they didn't have a problem with it. So.
And we haven't received anything to my knowledge. There wasn't anything in the packet, staff summary or anything. I haven't received any emails, just for the folks in attendance. You know, I have nothing for the applicant. I don't believe there are any parties or interested persons, unless I'm misreading this, because there are some writing that I may not be able to interpret very well. Is there anybody, either as an interested party or a witness to any of this, that would like to speak? Hearing none, I would like to close the hearing to all testimony. And hearing no anticipated discussion amongst commission, I would like to go ahead and close discussion unless somebody has some discussion on this item.
No discussion other than, like Stephen already said, that it's something that they need to look into to.
Right. Yeah, we discussed this a couple months back. Yeah. So that's pretty probably. And once you said that, I figured, yeah, we're moving forward on that. So I guess I'm going to close it to discussion and entertain a motion on item B under land use hearings.
Mayor, I would move to approve petition VAR 18-03, a request from Ron and Sherry Sipe for a variance to exceed the height requirements of 12 feet for the storage of a recreational vehicle carport and to build an accessory structure in a vacant lot abutting residence at 705 Little Rabbit, Aztec, New Mexico, tax ID number R0000241, and accepting findings of fact 1 through 5.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Carla, please call the roll.
Mayor Snowberg.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry.
Aye.
Commissioner Randall.
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. You can rejoin us now, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And our next land use hearing, item C, zone change 18-03, zone change request from R1 Single Family Residential Zoning District to A1 Agricultural or Rural Zoning District. Mr. Saavedra.
Zone change 1803 is a request from Michael Smith. The intent of this zone change is to change the current R1 Single Family Zoning District to A1 Agricultural and Rural District. The request comes in light of the applicant requesting to put a mobile home, perhaps two, with some livestock. And what livestock, after clarifying what the applicant means, is possibly 2 horses with some chickens. Subject property is just over 19 acres. It is just inside of city limits near Hampton Canyon. Now, for everyone to be aware, Hampton Canyon is actually not a dedicated right-of-way. So just want to let everyone know that off the bat. But it does have the name 1101 Hampton Canyon. This is considered a down zoning. So single-family zoning district, there's a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. The agricultural zoning district has a minimum lot size of 5 acres. So the applicant, should he ever decide to split the property with this zoning, could potentially only split it, well, not even 4 times. So it is considered down zoning. 7,000 square feet, he could potentially split it numerous times, but considering the lack of infrastructure, sewer, dedicated right-of-way, road, and on some arroyos, staff doesn't feel that a subdivision is going to go in there anytime soon, even with the current single-family zoning district. So this is just to give you an idea of what the land looks like. This is city limits. This is the subject property. There's an arroyo that goes through it. There is a gas well right there. There's a residential property right here, and on the other side as well. Now, this would be considered a spot zone, and that is a criteria that basically states that out of all the R1, you're now having an A1. And let me go back. This is federal land. This is all BLM. This is where the property is in proximity to Aztec, downtown, denser area of the city. This is just to give you an idea of what it looks like when you step foot on the property.
Okay.
It's not paved. Now, staff has received a few concerns. There was a letter sent to you in the packet, or basically stating that they are not in favor of the requested zone change. I did speak to another affected property owner, explaining what the request is about, what it entails. So with every land use item, again, we go through that criteria. What could happen if we zone change it to A1? Well, this is the only district that allows for the combination of single-wide mobile homes and livestock, meaning horses, chickens, goats, cows. Now, there is a limitation on how many horses you can have and how many chickens you can have based on the acreage size. But again, this is 19 acres, so there could be a few horses there if the applicant so chooses to have some. The R1 district doesn't allow chickens or horses by right. And that's not to say that there isn't horses already in that area, because there is. So I'll leave that for another, I'm not going to get into that, but there is some. We also look at what the impacts would be if you put in a single-wide mobile home. Now, the comprehensive plan, though a little out of date in my opinion, did not recommend for single-wide mobile homes. So that is in conflict to one of the criteria elements. However, that same comp plan wanted to see more ag land, more protection of ag land. So yes, it meets that requirement, but also it doesn't. But considering it is down zoning, considering where it's at, and then after talking to the applicant, the grade of the property is very unlikely to develop it based on the arroyo, based on just the lack of infrastructure, and the terrain just slopes in different directions. In addition, there is a gas well, and so there is a requirement that he has to be at least 500, he or she has to be 400 feet away from that wellhead. So that is also part of a condition that was outlined. Here's the criteria. Compatibility, is it compatible? By and large, yes. If you look at the area, someone wants to put a mobile home out there, there is a few double wides out in the area. There is already horses in the area. If there is never a place to put large animals, it probably is this spot or this area. That said, staff is recommending approval with conditions. And one of the conditions is the applicant is going to need to get a permit from BLM to properly access the property. As mentioned earlier, Hampton Canyon is not a right-of-way. And so that has to be submitted to staff so we make sure no one's trespassing on anyone's property. And that said, I will stand for questions.
So, Mr. Saavedra, is this approval a precursor so the property owner can go to BLM? Does this have to, I mean, obviously, common sense would dictate that as a property owner, I'm not going to pay extra money or do an application fee or anything, or even waste my time to inquire about this if I don't feel like I'm going to get the zone change. But is it a requirement, I guess is what I'm asking. Do we, you know what I'm saying? Do we have to approve this first?
City code requirement that they go to BLM to get that access permit. Now, the applicant right now can put a residential unit as it is. we would still like to see that they made the proper steps, went through the proper channels, so that they're not trespassing, they went to the right areas, so there's no issues. They can do that right now, as it stands.
Okay. But that's not really in our purview,
No,
so to
we don't
speak,
wanna-
so,
We don't want to create other adverse impacts.
right.
And so when we're looking at the zone change, if they are going to potentially put 1 house, 2 house, 4 houses there, well, we want to make sure that we mitigate some of those circumstances.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I have one question for Stephen. So does that need to be added about the BLM, about getting the BLM requirements for access? Does that need to be added to the findings of fact?
It can, absolutely.
I mean,
It can. Remember, those findings of facts are my suggestions to commission.
Right.
They can be changed, they can be all thrown out. That can be added.
well, I just didn't know if it needed to be added as one of the conditions of approval.
It certainly can, if condition feels it's appropriate.
Well, I guess
I
I'm
would say
asking your professional
yes.
opinion if it should be in there so
I
that
would-
make sure that it gets done, that access is approved through BLM?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know that the applicant.
Okay.
Okay, well, maybe we can
that'll
circle back around
clarify
and
that. Okay.
answer those questions and get them
A lot
answered.
of discussion about
Right.
the BLM permit.
Okay,
I obtained a BLM permit, and by the way, my name's Mike Smith. I obtained a BLM permit when I acquired that property many years ago.
okay,
So all the discussion about legal access, I'm one of the few people in Hampton Canyon who have legal access.
okay,
I do have a BLM permit, it's recorded in the county clerk's records.
all right. Well, good.
I didn't want this to go on and on about access.
Yeah,
because it-
when you already know the answer and you just got it.
Cool, thank
Okay.
you, thank you.
Well,
I
okay,
apologize.
no, it's fine, no. I don't have any further questions of Mr. Saavedra.
I don't either.
Mayor Silver,
ma'am.
I'm just curious, what's the water source out there?
There is
There is,
water.
there is city water? Okay. I drove out there today. I'm curious. Every time we have a land thing, I usually drive by, so I was checking it out.
There is city water.
Okay.
There is
But you'll have to
electric.
put in a septic system because there's no
Correct.
sewer.
There is no sewer out there.
Okay. Okay. So basically, we're looking at giving somebody permission to use their land the way they would like to, with advice from the city restricting how many units could be placed out there, homes, and division of that almost 20 acres.
Right. And I'll just kind of clarify why this came forward initially as well, is the applicant wanted to put 2 residential units out there.
Okay.
And it's right now 1 parcel.
Okay.
If he had talked about splitting it, if he's going to split it to put these special residential units with livestock, there's only 1 district that is compatible with that, and that is the A1 district.
Yeah. And I did read the letter of the resident who objected to it, but they weren't clear as to why at all. They said it seemed fishy. So I thought,
And I
Okay.
know there is, and in fairness to everyone that received a letter, I think, and I have to clarify with the petitioner, is that it stated livestock. And so, if I see livestock, well, does that mean there's going to be pigs out there and
Okay.
now, or a bunch
Yeah.
of houses and pigs? And so I could understand the need for clarification. I did talk to one affected property owner, kind of explain to them what this entails. So.
okay. Is this going to be your own home, or is this going to be a rental property or something?
It would be a property for sale.
A property for sale? Okay. And so you'll make it I'm a loan originator, so I always worry about financing single-wides. It would be-
I've been doing developments for 30 years, and I carry my own paper, so
I see. Okay.
we'll have to originate.
Mr.
Okay.
Smith, if you wouldn't mind, maybe in
Oh, yeah.
just giving us the option or the opportunity to do any questioning or make any comments or et cetera. Other than the Mayor Pro Tem, is there anybody else that wanted to add anything or ask any questions of our applicant? Okay. Hearing none, I will then move on. I guess we don't have anything for you, Mr. Smith. We do have some concerned parties.
About your,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make one comment about
Yes,
your
sir.
new haircut. It looks very
Oh,
good.
thank you. That will not influence my vote.
I think there's a gentleman.
Sir, are you down as an interested, I'm sorry, as a party to this? Or,
I'm one of the adjacent landowners.
okay. And what is your name, sir? So you would be considered an interested party or interested person?
I'm not sure where I was supposed to sign up or what I was supposed to do.
Okay. I'm personally okay with it. So if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium, sir, and just tell us what your name is?
I'm Tim Reynolds. I own one of the, I've received a letter. I own a property kind of adjacent across the street from, there's quite a few of our community here from Hampton Canyon, and it was real vague on what was going on and what was going to happen, so that's why we've got a lot of interest in keeping our community the way it has been. We're not opposed to people moving in, but you know, he's talking about selling it. If you change the zoning on it, what's the next person going to do? Is he going to bring in a herd of cattle, a bunch of chickens? You know, our little community there is going to be a livestock yard. You know, we're concerned, and so that's why we have a fairly good presence. Just people from Hampton Canyon, everybody raise your hand. So we got a pretty good presence here. We're concerned, and that's why we came and want to know what's going on. You know, if somebody wants to build a house and live out there, we don't have a problem with that. But if we're going to start selling it off to somebody else, that can be, and once you change that zoning, it's changed. So that's what we're concerned, and we don't have any insurances that we have a nice little Hampton Canyon. So, and I do have legal access to my property. So, thank you.
All right. Are there any others that?
Did you sign up?
Well, yes, sir. Are you on? Did you sign the?
I haven't signed in anything yet.
Okay. I'm going to defer to the city clerk and the city planner on this as far. Pardon me?
He wasn't sworn in.
Yeah, nobody was sworn in.
Mr. Reynolds was.
Okay. All right. If you had signed up on this, I just don't want to. I don't want to lose control of this. I see there's a lot of interested folks here, and I'm sensitive to that. If you signed up and you were sworn in, I can allow you to speak and testify on this matter. Otherwise, I'm going to have to. I don't know if you want to kind of talk into somebody's ear or something before they come up and maybe make sure that your concerns are addressed. But if so, who also has signed up? I've got. And I apologize. I can't really read all of the words. I've got Paul. We got Paul Martin from the other for the Haggertys. Mm-hmm. Diane Harrelson was also with the Haggertys. Donna Hobbs.
I was sworn in. I said the oath at the beginning. If you're concerned that I was sworn in.
Okay.
I would like to testify.
We probably need some legal.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go down the list here, and then we'll circle back around, sir. Okay.
That's fine.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes, sir.
interject? So, land use procedures go, anyone that received a letter is considered an affected party. Those are the ones that would be next in order. Outside of that affected party, then the opportunity gets to anybody else who has an interest in it.
Okay, so they're number 3. They're parties to include witnesses. They have 10 minutes each. Those are the folks that received letters by the city. So I'll start with them. Thank you for the clarification, and I apologize. We just don't do enough of these for me to be very proficient quite yet. So with that said, who received a letter that has signed up, has been sworn in, and would like to approach and speak, please? Yes, sir.
He didn't sign up, but we were sworn in.
Okay, well, I'm okay with that.
So maybe we need to refer to our city attorney.
I'm Jerry Hammonds, and I live on 998 Hampton Canyon Road. And what I'm worried about is if they start putting houses or a bunch of houses out there, is the roads. The roads are real bad in the winter, and we don't have anybody to maintain them. The county or the city, either one, don't do anything to them. It's just a couple of us that have a tractor out there that do it ourselves. And then the water, we don't have the water, we got water, city water, but not much water pressure out there. So that's what I'm worried about. And that's what I just want to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Mr. Hammond's. Okay, who else? Yes, sir. And what is your name, please? Well, I'll wait till you get up there.
Bob Mallory. I live at 820 Hampton Canyon Road. I didn't get a letter.
Okay,
And
well, if we could, I apologize, sir. I'm going to go through the folks that have received letters that are considered parties to this, and then we'll have an opportunity for interested persons, all right? So just, if you don't mind, let me kind of go through the procedure here. So who else that was sworn in, once again, has a letter received a letter from the city regarding this land use hearing and would like to speak, please come forward.
My name is William Kugler, and myself and my brother and sister are part owners. We own the property that's due east of this, along the entire length of this property. And I'm curious, a question here is, does the city of Aztec have a lot of rural property within the boundary, within the city limits?
Does the city of Aztec have a lot
of property zoned rural, such as is being requested?
You're talking about the A1 district?
Yes.
So if I understand you correctly, you're asking, does the city own property that's also zoned?
No, how much property within the city?
No, within the city limits, how many is zoned as A1?
Quite a few, actually. I couldn't tell you how many lots off the top of my head.
But it's not uncommon, I guess, is the question,
it's
right?
not uncommon. In
Okay.
fact, we do have a zoning issue with a lot of residential properties that don't meet the minimum requirements of 5 acres. So, for example, Sabina is a lot that's zoned A1 that does not meet that 5-acre minimum. So there's actually quite a bit. If you look at a zoning map, and we can get that at some point to everyone, A1 is very prevalent. I think that goes back to the comprehensive plan. At the time, there was a desire to promote larger agricultural properties.
Okay. As far as the city's plans go for that recreational district out there and the bypass that goes around the city, how does this work in with that? Does this even come close to it?
It's not in close proximity to the bypass.
Okay.
The bypass is by Tiger Pond. If I can go back to where actually that map is as well, you can show where the...
Go ahead.
Let's go to this slideshow, please. So this is the property right here. The bypass is going to go through there.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
The access that you recorded for the property, did that include access to one parcel or to 4 parcels or to 3 parcels? Or how is it divided?
It included access to this 20-acre tract.
Okay, so that any other subdevelopment would be accessed with the same road?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Are you going to be coming back and requesting access to other Hampton Canyon personal property for access to your property?
No. If I could just elaborate a little bit, I spent 43 years at Guardian Abstract. I've researched the Hampton Canyon Road access very thoroughly. It's sketchy at best. There's mention on some documents about reserving a 25-foot easement. There is no, to my recollection, no actual proper documentation for the existence of Hampton Canyon Road. The city of Aztec owns a 20-acre parcel, I believe, that Hampton Canyon Road runs through as it comes off of the highway, and the city of Aztec has never granted an easement through that property. Hampton Canyon Road, in my estimation, was created by the oil companies for their benefit, and due to probably some inadvertence or lax title work throughout the years, People have been afforded title policies which assure access where there actually is none. I believe Mr. Mallory probably could attest to that.
Yeah. They require you to give an easement that goes nowhere.
So, to answer your question, no,
Okay, folks.
Yes.
We got to stop with the back and forth stuff, okay? We got to stick to this, or we're going, or I'm just going to go by this list, and if you're not on the list, then I apologize, but we're going to have to move on.
Okay. I guess I would just question, are there any requirements on any of your R1 property as to the number of livestock they can keep on that?
So as it stands now, the R1 district does not allow livestock. It only allows, and it's not to say that it doesn't happen, because I know there's horses out there, but cats, birds, dogs. That's the R1 zoning district. Not chickens, not horses, not goats. Those are the requirements. A1 allows horses, allows cows, allows pigs. There's also a number that's attached to it in terms of how many they could have. Now, I understand there is a concern about how many animal units could be on the property. It is well within the right, should City Commission approve this zone change, that they put a condition on how many units of animals can be placed on the property as a safeguard, if that's a concern. That's within the Commission's right.
Now, were we to do that, is that something that we would kind of table this to come up with that figure?
I would hope so, because I'm sure you would need.
Because I certainly would not have a clue, as to say, well, you can have 6 pigs and, 3 roosters.
Like any other conditions, we put a condition on the staff report that says legal access. Mr. Smith has legal access, so we check that box off. That would be a condition if you so choose. But you also have to think, in terms of where we're at, there is horses out there. I understand the concerns of residents about so many animal units out in this area. It is relatively vacant, it's vast, it is 19 acres. That's why staff is comfortable with the recommendations and the conditions put forward within the staff report.
Okay.
Further comment on that issue?
Yes, sir.
If he fully intends on subdividing it and selling it, the condition for the number of animals, please take that into consideration. The number of lots that he'll be having out there access to, and the neighbors that are going to be stuck with all the remaining animals for the next buyers. And with that, I'll say thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right, so who is my next letter recipient that has sworn in? Ma'am, please. That's okay.
I've never done this before.
I understand. It's okay.
Can I ask him something first?
Of course.
Can you point out to me where this is on my map?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm terrible at reading maps.
Just as a little light music on the side here, I would consider maybe, well, no, I mean, we need to make sure that perhaps we, at the beginning of the meetings, we have
Don't be
either
nervous.
Mr. Savager or Carla say, look, if you're here for the land hearing, you need to sign this circulating around. We can tighten that up. Okay. Would you please, okay, we're moving on. Ma'am, would you please state your name?
Okay, I'm Sharon Emmons, and I live at 998 Hampton Canyon Road. And the little green line goes right through the middle of my house, so I was a bit nervous about this. If this zone change happens, does that have any effect on the price of our property out there? Does that make our property values go down?
I personally can't speak to that. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, it could probably go, I would just, based on, buying a couple of homes in my life, I would assume that it could have a positive or an adverse effect. It would just depend upon the folks that owned it. I mean, for example, and someone please stop me if I'm heading down the wrong road here, but if I bought a house next to Mayor Pro Tem Fry, and I moved a bunch of junk cars on it, obviously the property value is likely to go down because somebody's not going to want to move in next to me.
But that doesn't have anything to do with the zoning of it?
I can't really speak to that. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know. I don't think so, personally. I don't know if anybody else has any experience or anything that they could weigh in on that as far as specific zoning.
It's premature to know if your property will be negatively adverse in terms of the price. So there's a couple things you have to take into consideration. If they put single wides out there, that could potentially impact your property negatively. However, if you're going to zone change it to agricultural and your lots are 5 acres, well, that's a residential estate. And a lot of individuals like the fact that they can have horses. There is not a lot of properties in the city of Farmington that allow horses by right, yet we have a lot of individuals that want to have horses. So there is a high demand for that. So potentially you could see the opposite direction.
Yeah, but we don't have 5 acres. We have 3.68, so.
Okay, but I mean, with this zone
Yeah, the people
change,
moving
you're
in next
basically
door.
carving out
Right.
at least 5 acres for this 20 acres. What could also happen is, let's say they zone change, it stays R1 right now, and they split it up 50 times, because he could do that technically with the current zoning.
Yeah, he could
That's
put
traffic
he could
that
put a
you
mobile
have.
home park in there if he wanted to.
No, he can't put a mobile home park.
No,
down,
okay.
you know. But he could subdivide.
Or subdivide it into 20 lots and allow
Single family.
manufactured homes or whatever.
2.5 acres is limited it
For
for residentials in that area.
7,000 square feet, not 2 acres.
You
7,000.
need septic systems to be 1 acre lots.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
for enemy
Okay.
requirements, yes.
So about 20 times, hypothetically. And then you have exponentially more potential issues with buyers and landowners doing whatever with their property within the allowance of the law, of course, but drive through downtown Aztec, and there's a lot of folks that are within the allowances of the law, but may not be cosmetically something you would want to move in next to. Right.
To answer her question, it's a good one, and it's a valid one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no clear definitive answer on will this zone change negatively or positively affect the value of your land. It's just, we just don't know. And
Yeah.
I would be a fool to say, it would be premature of me to say it's going to go skyrocket, because there's other factors you have to consideration with that question.
Right, there's access questions, there's...
Overall, housing prices in the area
Right.
dropping, so as a result, we just cannot answer that question.
Okay, all right. Thank you for letting me ask it.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
It's a great question.
Okay. I'm going to start stepping on the gas here. Who's next? Who, as far as, ma'am, I think you had a letter as well?
I did not have a letter.
Okay. Are there any other folks that have letters from the city that would like to present to the commission? Seeing none and hearing none, I'm going to move on to the, okay. All right. Folks, we're doing the best we can here, but we gotta be on point here so we can move on to the next thing. We have another land hearing after this.
I don't have a lot to say. My name's Scott Iverson. I live at 1010 Hampton Canyon Road, and I've lived out there for 17 years, and a lot of my neighbors have been there even longer than myself, and I just don't want to see any disruption of our peaceful little community out there, and it's been a great place to live. I've raised my daughter out there. She's gone off to college, and it's a great community and great neighbors, and I just don't want to see any disruption of that and it turn into something that it hasn't been. You know what I mean? I like our peaceful little community. I want to stay that way. So
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Okay. That, I believe, is the last person that would fall under parties. So now I'm going to move on very quickly to interested persons that would like to have some input. Ma'am?
Donna Hobbs.
Please. You signed up. Thank you. Good evening.
I'm Donna Hobbs. I have lived out there since 1996, which was before the city of Aztec took over that area. I have 4.68 acres. I'm not on city water. I'm on a well. Other people out there are also. And I have asked I asked at the time that Aztec took over to have agricultural land because I wanted to retire and I wanted to get a horse. 4.68 acres is Aztec's idea of what you need to have agricultural land. I was refused, my neighbor with 20 acres was refused because they said that's not an agricultural area and there's not enough water. And so I feel a little uncomfortable that I've been out there for 22 years and can't have agricultural, can't have a horse legally, although I have been told if you're sneaky enough, you can have a horse out there too. And so I'm just thinking that I want agricultural too. If other people get to have an agricultural area, I think that I should be able to have a horse out there too.
Okay. And I appreciate your sentiment, and I'm sure Mr. Saavedra will be happy to entertain you one day to discuss that further. But for tonight's proceedings, I appreciate your input, and I do understand and appreciate the spirit of your comment. Thank you.
Just real quick, because I'm the only one I think that maybe doesn't feel the same way.
And if you would, please state your name.
I didn't sign up because I didn't know
Did you
how to
swear
do
in?
it. No? Okay. But he explained it really good, and I'm for him being able to change
Okay.
his property.
All right. I think that's why I have this thing. All right, is there anybody else
The other gentleman.
that was sworn in that would like to give any kind of comment or testimony under interested persons? Sir, you were first, and then you can be next, and then I think we're finished. Sir, please.
I was sworn in, and my name's Doug Parks. I'm
Okay.
not listed there.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Excuse me. Anyway, I want to bring up something that I haven't heard brought up yet about this, and that is revenue from property tax. And I'm feeling like this is coming across because, is A1 is less property tax. And so our area is a residential, it's R1, right? So we have R1 zoning. To change it and go to larger parcels and allow animals is going to reduce the revenue to the city. And not that that may be a big concern or not, I don't know, I'm not concerned about that, but I am concerned about what it will change the neighborhood to. So if it brings in, a different type of neighbor, then I don't think that's quite what we want out there, at least at Hampton Canyon, for me. That's my piece, and do you have any questions, I guess, for me?
I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And, sir.
I'm Bob Mallory. I've lived in Hampton Canyon for 45 years. And every time you turn around, the city's changing the rules. When I went to sell half of my property, which I owned 5 acres, and I sold half of it, they told me I could not sell any less than 2.5 acres. And then they tell us that every home out there is supposed to be a double wide, set on a permanent foundation. And if you're going to give agricultural zoning to one, I think that anybody that has an animal out there ought to get the same effect because the taxes are completely different. And I don't care if he splits his property. It's good. But I sure worry about the tax liability of where it'd be less taxes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments to the folks that have spoken? We kind of had a procession there. So hearing none, I want to close that portion to testimony and open it to commission discussion. So we got a lot there. So I would like to maybe hear what your thoughts are. Anybody?
I'll jump in there.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor. I almost would like to, I know if we table this, we have to do it to a specific time and date, but I feel like we need more information. I guess on how many animals we would be willing to allow to protect the people that are already out there, if that's what we so choose. How many that could be on there, and I don't know, to maybe look at some of the, I don't know if there's a way to answer the questions about the value or the property tax value or whatever on that. It just seems like there's a lot of unanswered. After listening to the residents who have lived out there for all these years, there's a lot of unanswered questions, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there is a significant difference in the tax rate for agriculture versus residential. And I'd like to understand more of the makeup of the community and understand what was said about what has been passed in the past and the possibility that the city has been inconsistent with that. I feel like I need more information and a clearer picture of the neighborhood.
Okay.
I'll go along with that as well. I'd like to hear some more on what kind of limitations we would think about putting if we did approve agriculture.
The number of animals.
And also, take a good look at the area and determine, they're deserving of city services as well as anybody else. They're in the city limits. And are they getting what they're needing right now? And if so, how does this all come to play in with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Randall?
Whatever. I guess I'm the opposite. As far as the inconsistency, I mean, in my mind, I understand wanting to have all the information, but I hate having, and then the limit on animals. It's this gentleman's property. If we want to go A1, that's kind of what we can decide to do. As far as nitpicking how many horses or cows or pigs, I mean, I understand, you don't want it turned into a stockyard, which I wouldn't want a stockyard next door either, but at the same time, if they are A1, it's kind of their right to, I don't know. I hate limiting people's rights on their own property is my biggest deal. I mean, I understand their concerns, but at the same time, if we do change it to A1, it's kind of up to them, but, I mean, we can discuss it further, that's fine. I feel bad prolonging it for Mr. Smith, but.
And just for my, just to weigh in, I appreciate both sides. I appreciate, but I have to honestly say, I feel I'm kind of lined up with Commissioner Randall. We're out in the Mountain West, and that's one of the reasons folks move out here is to be able to do their thing with, buy your piece of property out in your personal paradise, right? And do what you want, as long as you're not, I mean, if you had 2 acres and he's putting 6 horses on it, that's another conversation altogether. But it's a large parcel, it's fairly isolated, and, I do appreciate the concerns of the other landowners as well, though. So I feel a little bit torn, but honestly, I feel that our city staff has done their diligence, and we can't always be circling back around and backing up to what previous commissions, commissioners, city staff have done or not done. We would be here for weeks if we were trying to unravel stuff like that. And I have no interest in that personally, from doing, well, that's not fair because Mayor so-and-so 20 years ago said no to me, so, but I do appreciate the point of view that that you raise. I guess this is a little bit of a tougher one than I anticipated.
Well, Mayor, I would recommend, if anyone else wants to have something changed or if they've been denied something before, to come and visit with Stephen and see what they can do.
Because there's clearly, depending upon how this goes, there's precedent for sure, either way. So I am going to providing is there anybody else that wants to add any comment? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close it to comment and then entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd move to approve ZC zone change 18-03, a request from Michael Smith for a zone change from R1 single-family residential zoning district to A1 agricultural or rural zoning district with the 5 conditions and accepting findings of fact 1 through 5. Is that right?
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second it so that it can go to a vote.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry?
Aye.
Commissioner Randall?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Commissioner Syke?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay.
Point of order. Did you guys just approve this without putting any limitation on the number of animals?
We approved the zone change as it was presented by us, by city staff, as it sits here.
There were no limitation on the number of animals by city staff.
There is, but
Yeah.
right. There is through city ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's already.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience with us and the folks, the back and forth. Thank you. Item D. Sorry, I got to put my glasses back on. We are now to item D, conditional use permit 18-03, a conditional use permit to allow a boat in the front yard setback area. Okay. Mr. Saavedra, if you won't.
Stephen.
Item D.
Correct. So, last land use item.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Forever?
So this is,
Just for tonight?
We're only getting started. This is conditional use CUP 1803. This is a request by Carla Harville. Carville.
Harville. Like the ice cream in New York, Stephen.
This is a request to allow a boat in the front yard, a residential R1 zoning district. A little background on this: in the summer, community development by basically orders of city staff decided to step up some code enforcement. So city staff, code enforcement, started doing some sweeps within the neighborhood in terms of who's violating some of the various laws. Unfortunately for Carla, she basically got a letter basically stating that she was violating the R1 zoning districts, which does not allow boats, RVs, trailers, travel trailers in the front yard. They're only allowed on the sides or in the rear of the property. I had met with Carla, basically trying to let her know the rhyme and the reason and the logic behind the law. It's been in existence, at least from our records, to the early 2000s. And I will articulate as best as I can the reasons for that law. As we all are aware, this is a recreational area. A lot of people like to have campers, boats, and RVs. And so it is to my understanding that city staff, city commission put in an ordinance to limit on where they can go, their placement. Sorry, trying to get back on track. So this is the subject property. This is 1107 Cimarron Avenue. And trying to get back on track.
That's fine.
Okay. This is city statute that basically states the boats are supposed to be on the side or in the rear. Now, it was mentioned to the applicant at the time, we'll just get a variance to have the boat there, but a variance does not allow for that. A variance is for dimensional standards, lot size, height, and so forth. The only way to go around that is a change of use of the district, a zone change, or a conditional use. Hence, the applicant submitted the conditional use permit. Now, at the time, the applicant wasn't the only one that received a letter for a boat or RV or trailer in the front yard. City staff had calculated that over 40 letters had been sent out. And by and large, 90%, well, a little over the 90% have complied with that. Now, we did hear some grumbles about why are you enforcing it? What's the big deal? But basically, city staff was directed to enforce the law, and hence the code enforcement officer was enforcing the law. So this is to give you an idea of the boat. This is a picture from 2012. This is a Google image. The applicant has indicated that the boat has been there for, well, many years. So as you can see, this is 2012. Boat's there. Next slide, please.
Don't face it to the screen, face it to the... I don't know why it's not. Hold up, let me restart it.
Technical difficulties.
Try it.
So, R1 zoning district. This is a faux pas of presentations, a lot of text, so forgive me, but this is the code that the code officer referenced. Now, the reason for the code, as I mentioned in the beginning, is one, aesthetics, and two, safety. And aesthetics we can argue about all day. Does an RV look good in the front yard? Does a boat look good in the front yard? We can argue that all day. Safety, however, is something that it's a little harder to argue. Part of the logic on having an RV in the back or the rear, and granted these are for larger properties in general, but if you start parking, there's a 2-car parking requirement with city codes anytime you construct a house. So you got to have at least 2 cars parked on the property. So if you're parking a boat in the front, you're taking away 1 parking space. Now what that does is force individuals to park out here. Now you can park in the street. That's considered spillover parking. That's not on-street parking. There's a difference to that. Now what spillover parking does, when you have a party or big event, people come over, they like to park in the street. There's nothing wrong with that. We all, at some point, park on the streets. But what it does over time is it starts narrowing that right-of-way. You start parking 1 car here, you start parking 1 car here, that right-of-way gets smaller. That's the safety issue. Because when you have a narrow right-of-way, then there's only basically 1 lane to travel if that right-of-way width isn't 50 feet. And as we know, there's a lot of streets within Aztec. I can name Blanco, I could name Pollard, I could name this one. They're not 50 feet. And so when you reduce 1 lane of traffic, well, again, it's a safety issue. Not only for pedestrians, but for cyclists, as well as motorists. So you don't want to have incoming, ongoing traffic in one direction. But it happens. We all know it happens. So that's a safety issue. The other issue is if you have large boats, RVs, and you park right there in your driveway and you're trying to back out, well, that blocks your view shed. It's a safety issue. Again, that's not to say large SUVs or trucks don't do that already. But hence, there was a code trying to mitigate some of these issues. So that's the safety element. Aesthetics, we can argue all day. Now this is the boat. It's not fairly large. It's not huge. It's relatively small by a lot of boats out there. So I think staff had to take that in consideration. Nevertheless, it's still forcing traffic parking out in the street right here. So when we talked to Carla, or when I talked to Carla, I said, look, we're not going to be for a conditional use permit if you're going to compromise safety. It's just not in our best interest to do that. As city staff, I cannot go forward with that. The time the applicant said, we can possibly work with this, maybe move some cars in here, get it straightened out, so we're not always having this issue. The other thing to take into consideration is that there's a school right behind the house. Now, for the applicant, to park in the back is difficult because she has a fence. There's an alley, so it's not so easy. And the lots, the way they're laid out, there's just not a lot of space. So that has to be taken into consideration as well. Is this a unique situation? Yes. If this was in Cocoa Valley, the huger lot, maybe not such a big deal, but the lots are not as large to accommodate some of the boats or some of the RVs. That said, the law was put in place for a reason. So over time, city staff's code officer went out there to monitor what's going on. Are we seeing this activity? The boat is there, cars are there, so okay. Now it's been there for years. Has there been an issue? I don't think so. So that has to be taken into consideration as well. Now last week, snap this picture. This is the boat. We also noticed that there's a trailer on the property as well, which is, again, the violation of the city code. Now this was this week. It's called cleaned up, but there still is the boat and there is the trailer there. So you will find with this staff report, staff offered two recommendations. A recommendation to deny the conditional use. Why? Because there's that safety element if the street remains blocked. Plus, it's hard to recommend something when we're in violation of something else. That said, it also presents a precedent that's possible. This is not a variance, which limits precedent. Conditional use could allow for other situations like this, so we may be here time and time again. But we also have to consider the boat is relatively small. If they were to keep it, basically, these cars are not on the street, then staff also put forward the recommendation with conditions. And I'm not going to apologize, but I'm going to leave it up to you to make the decision, because that's where city staff was having a hard time. There's some safety issues. We haven't even talked about aesthetics, and we won't talk about aesthetics. Commission can talk about that all we want. What we are concerned about as city staff, community development, is a safety issue. So that said, I will stand for questions.
I do have at least one question. It may lead to other questions. My first question is, conditional use permit, does that apply only to that specific boat? So let's suppose, and I'm going to use myself as an example. Up until about 2 weeks ago, I had no plans to buy a new truck, but I did. And I got rid of my old truck, got a new truck. Now granted, it's not a larger truck, but I decided, I don't want this one anymore, so I'm going to get this one. Does that also apply to this as well? So we approve a conditional use permit, hypothetically. We see the boat, I don't know.
By a yacht.
Promotion, lottery, a friend is like, yo, I don't want this boat anymore. I'll give it to you for a little bit of nothing. I just want to get rid of it. And I've been friends with you for years, whatever, fishing buddies, and they get it at a really good price and they can't pass it up, because it's a much better boat or larger boat. Is that also going to cover that change in size, model, whatever of boat or
Depends. Depends on how strict you want those conditions to be. You can make it, if we allow the boat, we will allow a boat of X size. And so there has to be X size. So in your example, if you upgrade to a yacht that's a lot larger, well, it wouldn't meet those conditions that were approved. But again, that depends on how vague or how specific you want to be.
Okay.
Mayor Snober, you mentioned that there were like 40 citations about
letters.
Letters sent out of other recreational vehicles, and 90% complied.
Yes.
So this one can't because of the conditions of the space in the yard and so forth.
Not necessarily. So 40 letters were sent, 40 courtesy letters were sent out. It's not citations. What we heard from various individuals was, well, where am I going to store it?
Yeah.
I don't have the lot size. What we found is a lot of individuals just moved it to the back, moved it to somebody else's property, or moved it to a storage yard.
Yeah.
Granted, a lot of them, it was not easy. In fact, you know, the code officer just didn't hit this one. There was 3 of them that were hit as well. Sent courtesy letters because they all were in violation. We've seen compliance, even on Cimarron. So, yeah, it's not easy. Anytime you're enforcing a code that hasn't been, and it has been enforced. Let me just, you know, there was a property on Church Street. I know of one individual that's sitting up here where we sent a letter where you're not allowed to have a vehicle in the front yard. So this is by no means out of the blue, we're going to start enforcing this now. It has been enforced. It's just been enforced in different areas. This was a little different because it was, let's do a sweep on one thing, focus on this one thing, and here we go. And that's where we got, well, 40 different letters out. By and large, the vast majority have complied one way or the other. Now, that's not to say if you go in certain areas, you're going to see RVs and boats. It's going to happen, but...
I was just wondering about setting a precedence, you know, approving this, and then all these people will go, wow, you know, you allowed this one, and you said, you know, that we had to do something, so I just...
And I don't know if that's a question for our city attorney, or if maybe you can kind of answer this a little bit, but let's suppose we do, I mean, this may not technically be setting a precedent, you know, or is it, legally?
I'm not an attorney, so I will not...
And my concern moving forward is, because I mean, I've been on the other side of these things, and I understand that it's a drag, you know, especially if you've been kind of, I don't want to use, I guess, for lack of a smarter phrase that I can think of quickly, you kind of got away with it for a while, and then, you know, there's a new group of folks in town, or a new compliance officer, and they have new mandates from the department head and or the commission, whoever is driving that train, and this is what I want you to focus on. I mean, we see this at the national level all the time. This becomes a new focus that is maybe something specific that individual wants to crack down on. Maybe that's why they ran in the first place. And then they, you know, the appropriate department starts doing that, and yeah, maybe it wasn't a priority to previous commissions or code compliance departments, but it is now. So I guess my thought on it is, I do appreciate the fact that maybe you've done it for maybe the boat in question, or, you know, anybody we could talk about around Aztec has done it for a certain period of time, and it seems like it's okay because I didn't get in trouble, so I kind of got away with it. And now, not so much. So I guess to come back to my question, if we allow one person and then say somebody else comes up next month and says, well, my neighbor, or this person that I saw at the commission meeting on September 11th got this conditional use permit, I would also like a conditional use permit because of my lot size, et cetera, and then we deny them. For no real additional reason, does that put us in a potentially precarious position?
So you did mention that this was a conditional use permit as opposed to other sorts of, you know, variances and such that would be more of a blanket issue. But I think you do raise a valid question. If everybody on the street has a very small lot, how do you get to say yes to one person and no to another? I haven't, you know, looked closely at the difference in the terms between the conditional use permit and others. I'd be happy to do so. But I think it is a valid concern if everybody has the same issue, how are you going to, you know, differentiate between, you know, this boat and the one 3 doors down?
And that, in addition to that, the folks that have complied be like, you know.
But in fairness to the applicant, I mean, she did stick with the issue.
Right. Right.
So, you know, she fought it, and Tracy fighting it. Now, to try to answer the question of precedent, I'll do the best I can. And this is your lawyer answer, it depends. But Let's just imagine that scenario, for example. Everybody on the block wants to get the boat. You could limit the condition to certain sizes, certain unique factors that may necessarily set the precedent. So let's just say, for example, in Kokopelli, well, I want to have a boat in the front yard, but you look at Kokopelli and you look at Cimarron, the lots are different. You got a lot more space. What's your hardship? That's what a variance always covers, is a hardship. But this is not a dimensional standard, so we can't go the variance route. But, you know, in fairness, their lot is not big enough. Now, someone could argue you should have bought a house that would accommodate a boat or an RV. That's a valid, quick question. But again, if you didn't know what the law, and that's not to say they didn't know, and that's not an excuse by any means, but a lot of these things you got to take them into consideration. So just to answer your question on will it set a precedent, I would say it's very possible. Now, we did increase the fees for land use, so that might be a deterrent. Don't know. But you can restrict it so much so that it would be hard that this situation applies to the next situation. But granted, and this is, I'm just going to leave it at, every land use case is different. It's
Right.
always a moving target. There's no similar situations. And so...
But then you run into a situation possibly where you're asking your code compliance officer to go out and spend 90% of their time on 10% of the issues, and they're chasing the proverbial tail, saying, well, you have to do, and then we're talking weeks and months of the process, and man hours, and
I can
conditional
tell you,
use permits, flooding the commission potentially.
as a department head overseeing code enforcement, I do not want to instruct him to go out and enforce the law only to be back here to testify over a conditional use. What's the point? There's a reason for the law. It was asked to enforce it. He did his job. That's kind of where we're at. We as city staff don't want to see anyone not have the right to use their boat by any
Right.
means or any other personal property. But we also understand that there's rules in place that we didn't create. I mean, this is years ago. But that's kind of where we're at as a department head. What time is it now? We don't want to be spending a lot of time going after a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
So.
Mr. Mayor, may I add a little bit to what Nikki said? Everything you do is a precedent. The question is a conditional use, what are the conditions? And how are they unique from the other? So just looking at this situation, you would have a very difficult time turning down other people on the street if they came in, because the special condition is really lot size and historical use. So you have to kind of consider that balance versus, well, the other folks didn't apply.
Right.
But if you're going to be challenged, the people will come in and say, tell me what was different here from there that you did. You did state that you can put your restrictions on it, those type of things, but I think you do have to look at, in a litigation context, of course, going to be trying to say, tell me what was different.
And that's kind of where I was going with that, where not necessarily specific to this hearing right now, but I would hate for the department, any department, to get bogged down with, and I know not everybody on that street is going to buy a boat just because one person gets conditional use permit, but there are already existing boat owners that have figured out a way to comply. And if they said, well, we don't really have to now, and that would bog down the department having to chase after that, especially even if we added very strict dimensions. Who's going to enforce that? You know, and that costs money. And obviously, we've just been through budgets. We don't have the manpower, person power, and the time or money to pay somebody to chase after folks that are trying to kind of stretch the limits of the ordinance in the city. That's kind of where I was going with that. So I'm going to stop beating on that, and if there's anybody else that would have any questions for Mr. Saavedra before we call up our applicant.
No.
Hearing none, I will allow our applicant to approach, please. You have 15 minutes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. sir, as well.
The first thing I want to say is I'm not trying to stretch any kind of limits at all. I kind of feel a bit offended, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
the way.
We've lived here for 23 years now, and we've had the boat 16 years there. We've had some opportunities to store it, turned it down, wanted to build our house.
Because you weren't familiar with the law.
Yeah, we didn't know. It was passed in 2002. We bought the boat in 2003. We've been there for 16 years with it. And also, we really quickly complied. We sold the truck the other day, and these are pictures from yesterday off the roof. The boat takes up about as much space as that bush, our neighbor's bush. It's sitting next to us, and the concern is visibility to the road.
There's no safety issues.
And you know, well, I'm just saying, you know, I just was impressed with the Ori support presentation, and then, you know, to try to get young, vibrant people in here that enjoy the outdoors. When you start shutting down, you can't have a boat in front of your house. So I think you're shutting off a lot of revenue.
And I want to say too, as far as the size of our lot, you know, they said, we'll put it in your backyard. We can't. We have the alley, Lydia Rippey's fence, and our big, huge fence. And we have like a cinder block fence. So we're not going to take down our fence to take our boat in the backyard. And, you know, when they say 90% of the people, you know, have complied, I'm not a rebel, but, you know, I feel that, you know, if we can safely get everything in our driveway, I understand that if you give it to us, you might give it to somebody else, but like Mr. Sabadre said, you know, there are certain circumstances, you know, for each person. It's all on an individual basis.
And I was also wondering, is this being enforced now? I mean, is this like just the 10% part, and then the 90% is still out there that you've got to go get?
No. So to clarify, 90%.
I didn't mean that 90. I just brought that up randomly, but the enforcement is continuing.
Enforcement, yeah.
Is continuing.
Yeah.
So just within our area.
No, this was citywide. So this was
citywide.
This was
okay.
Different neighborhoods at different times, but this was focusing on one thing.
So everywhere's been hit in the city with this, and you have them close to 90% compliance.
At the time, yes, no. Of course, camping season comes and goes. I've noticed personally that there's other RVs and out there that still outstanding. As the code officer, you know, sees them, he will tackle them appropriately.
If I could, and just to clarify, and I apologize if I didn't state this very clearly, I didn't in any way mean to suggest that you were trying to stretch the law. I meant if other neighbors had seen that you kind of were allowed, you got your conditional use permit, they may have been in compliance previously, but then maybe like, I'm just going to slip this out here in the driveway just for the weekend, and then before you know it, it's, you know, December, and they're still sitting out there, and our compliance officer is having to continually go back, and then maybe they moved it, and then, you know what I mean? And that's kind of where what I meant with that. So I apologize for any misunderstanding.
And none of our
there.
neighbors have any issues of us having our boat in our driveway. So I know that there are certified letters sent out to everybody within, what, 150 feet?
100 feet.
100 feet. So.
We didn't get any negative response, anyone that says they were against it. We also didn't get anybody that was for it.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Sapp.
I was just wondering, how big is your boat? Is it an 18?
foot?
Okay.
I took off the big part of the trailer in the front, take off like a 4-foot tongue on it. So I took that, put that in storage.
Okay, so 18. That's an average size boat, 18 foot.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you look at the pictures, there's no safety issue. We took that from the roof, going both directions, all, you know, everything fits in there perfectly. Our motorcycle and moped at the end there. So.
Mayor Snover, I drove by your place today. You've got a lovely yard, and everything was nice and neat, and so I had checked it out in person.
Thank you. Yeah.
My only, and again, I sound like I'm being negative on this, and I please, I don't want it to sound that way, but it is what it is. My only issue, and I keep, you know, I've referred back to the zoning, conference I went to, it was probably the best, but maybe in some cases the worst thing I've done, because now I think of these things in this light when I hear the anecdotal horror stories from other city compliance folks and city planners talking about the unintended consequence, and that's my concern. So this conditional use permit sticks with this particular family and their specific boat. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Saavedra?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't want to discourage people from owning recreational vehicles, but on the other hand, I don't want to drive down, at least my neighborhood anyway, and see a bunch of boats or campers or whatever sticking out of driveways. And that's kind of how I view it. And I worry that this one might be fine, but I'm just voicing my concerns that another may not be as willing to work or to do what they need to do to kind of pack it in there neatly and tightly and you know, address those issues. And again, we don't have the folks in these departments to enforce those things. So it turns into another issue where we're doing another large sweep, quote unquote, and every several months we could potentially open ourselves up to this type of an issue. Maybe it's campers next time, or, you know, I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, I guess I don't know if I'm being clear on that, but that's my only concern is the precedent that we set, not the individual case right now, but the precedent that down the road that we put ourselves into. Because I moved from a house with no driveway in a very similar, you know, very tight lot with no opportunity. The lot is not conducive to backing vehicles into the back. It would be nearly impossible, and I ended up just getting rid of them. That was my decision. You know, I'm not suggesting anybody else should do that.
I just find it's kind of interesting because Farmington does not have this law.
That's true.
And, you know, it's a big city, you know, I don't understand. I asked him if I could get on something to try to change that law. And he told me that would be pretty difficult. So that's kind of sad that, you know, I'm a retired school teacher. I have plenty of time, you know. So I just, you know, being told that the law is hard to change is, you know, pretty disheartening to me. So.
Well, not to get too far down that, but if anybody wants to make an ordinance sort of change, they would have to probably run for city commission in a couple of years, and, you know, trying to affect change from the inside out, I guess, would be your recourse, or to lobby others to bring it up to city staff, just to kind of answer your question. But as a private citizen, you couldn't actually petition. You know, you would just have to push one of us to push them to change the ordinance. So it would be difficult, but it is not impossible. But to stay on topic on that, does anybody have any, well, first, do you have anything else you would like to add or comment? Okay.
No, but I do want to go back to the ORI support. You know, if people are moving into Aztec and they can't have their boats, you know, I think that is, would be an issue, you know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, does anybody on the commission have any questions for the applicants?
No.
Okay. Are there any other parties that would like to speak that received a letter on this issue? Seeing none, are there any interested persons that are affected by this that would like to take 5 minutes potentially to discuss this or to bring up any points? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, I'm going to close this hearing to testimony and then give commissioners the opportunities to discuss this issue amongst themselves. So with that in mind, we're open to discussion on this item.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. I just think a couple things to take into consideration. I think that I wouldn't have a problem with doing the conditional use with like a boat no larger than 18 foot. That subdivision was built in the 50s, the early 50s, most of those houses, when people didn't have two vehicles. Most people didn't have a recreational vehicle. And I think with the limited parking, that does create a problem. I know that we need to keep in mind our safety at all times for, for people on the street. That's a big issue. But I also think that people ought to have the opportunity, if it can fit, and if we can, make it work without, because those streets are narrow. They're not like the more modern subdivisions today, and you can drive over there anytime, and it's pretty crowded going down those streets. So I think if they have the opportunity, I wouldn't mind setting that it can't be a boat any bigger than, say, 18 foot. And I'm kind of leaning towards the second, that the trailer's removed and that the trash receptacle is, set in the street like Waste Management has requested. As long as they can get their vehicles in the driveway like they have in the pictures. That's kind of where I'm leaning, is on that, the second choice. And I think if other people want to come and request a variance, I mean, like conditional use is on a case-by-case basis. And I understand the precedent, obviously, but, if somebody came and wanted to park their 22-foot boat, it would be a whole different scenario.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
I understand. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm kind of both ways, because as far as the size restriction goes, if they wanted to put a 22-foot, they can move their other vehicle and still fit. Like, I'm almost on board with doing a limitation as long as you can fit it in your driveway. I mean, because even if they got a 22-foot or 20-foot, as long as it fits in that one spot of their driveway.
Without their cars having to be in the street?
Yeah, without their cars having to be in the street. You know what I mean? As long as you can
Okay.
fit it in there. It's just, if you do a size restriction, if that's the way we have to go, we have to go. To me, it doesn't make sense,
Okay.
because if they want to get something a little bit bigger down the road, and they can still fit everything in, it's like, okay, well, now we have to come again.
No.
And I do have a kind of an issue with the conditions, just because it references, the poly cart. It's like saying, well, we'll let you put your boat there, but make sure you move your trash can. Like, everyone shouldn't have them in the sidewalk anyway, right, Stephen? I mean, it's just saying.
So I can't technically use both.
Okay, well, then between us, like, I think it's just.
It's been a request.
I don't want to say rude, but it's just something to say, well, you can put your boat there, but you also need to make sure you get your trash can back, and that other trailer, we talked about that. This is about the boat to me. Like, I hate putting other stipulations on it. Like, I just want to worry about the boat. That's the conditional use permits for the boat. As far as the trash cans and the other trailer, that's like a separate issue that if they get cited for it later, then they have to deal with it then. But to me, this is just about the boat. I just don't. It just seems weird to throw in the poly cart and the other trailer on this one, because they're getting a conditional use for their boat, if that makes sense. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah,
It's not,
I
don't want to say
understand.
rude, but it just seems
I
like.
understand what you're saying.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It may not be
Well,
right.
that's. I think the issue was on a lot of the other pictures. It was in the sidewalk, which a lot of other people do too. It's just I don't want to have to require.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, we can't talk to them.
Yeah, we can't.
But
we have to.
But between that's just what I wanted to say to you guys. Between our discussion is, I don't like those conditions put on it. And as far as the president goes, instead of precedent, whatever, it is a case-by-case basis, to me anyways. And if those other people did want to come and, request a conditional use, that's their right to. They can. I hate saying that, well, now we're going to be bogged down with conditional use permits.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's what we're here for. That's kind of our job. And as far as staff goes, I understand it creates more work for them. I don't think that's going to happen. Everyone's going to come running in with conditional use permits. But
No, I agree.
And there's different stipulations. I mean, it is hard. Like, it's a narrow alley, and they obviously fit it all in the driveway. So I'm fine with moving forward. And if someone says, well, hey, why'd you do this? Well, if you have an issue with it, we can talk about yours too. I mean, they took the initiative to come before us, and I don't want to say fight it, but to,
Be heard.
look at their options and be heard.
They exercise their right to come before City Commission and try and change it.
I don't like the
permit
comments of making an excuse like, oh, well, it's going to create so much more work. 'Cause that's not their
No,
problem.
and I want to quantify that and kind of put that in proper context, is that we are a small city, and we keep using that word precedent, but this does set a precedent. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm opposed to it. I'm just being kind of, trying to be neutral and bring up the potential downfall or potential unintended consequences that could occur. I have nothing personal against any of the folks that have come up here this evening, but it is also our job to consider those things down the road, so we're not sitting here and wading through all of this stuff if we can avoid it, and just strictly so folks can try and get an exception to the rule.
I don't think we're going to have a rush on.
We very well may not, and I don't anticipate that we are. And I understand, but we have ordinances for a reason, and like we've talked about with earlier this evening with the RV ports, that law clearly needs to be changed, and it's being changed because the modern RVs are larger and they require more space. Just like modern American families require more space. So I personally don't feel like that is a reason to give an exception necessarily just because you live in a house that is a little bit smaller and not as amenable to your recreational wants and needs. And I'm just trying to be neutral and look at all sides of this and the potential issues that could arise. It's not a personal thing. I'm just trying to be as thorough as possible because we will likely see a handful of these down the road in the future. And I don't want to have to be personally faced with the question, well, my situation is exactly the same as theirs. Why are you telling me no when you told them yes? And I don't have a good answer for that. And that's why I want to, and I know it's late, but I know, we need to take the time and do this right if we're going to do it. So that's my 2 cents on it, or, well, much more than 2 cents, but that's my opinion and how I feel about it. Commissioner Lewis, do you have, surely you have some words.
Words of wisdom? I doubt it. I don't know if they're wise or not. I think I was impressed with the photos that were shown. Everything did fit in the driveway, which is, when I first read about it, in my mind, I got a picture of them parking in their front lawn. And I said, well, that's not what it was. So that's, and it's not what it was. Yeah. And so after looking at it, I'm thinking, I think, I know conditional use permits for everyone would be a problem. However, because it's tied specifically to this particular instance with these particular individuals, it doesn't carry over, say, if they were to sell their house and somebody else moves in, it doesn't go with it. So that's one thing to look at as well. This isn't like creating a variance or changing the ordinance.
Zoning change or anything like that?
Yeah, zoning. So I can't, as far as I'm concerned, I think they pretty much met my concerns when they showed me the photos.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, just
Yes,
a question for the commission while we're discussing. So if we did approve the conditional use, would we still, and took out about the trailer and the poly cart, as Commissioner Randall pointed out, should we leave in all parking remains on the property and not in the street? Or does that, is that also
if they have
dictating?
overflow parking,
I know,
they should
but
be able to.
on a I'm saying on a regular basis, their car, I know if you have company, then they're gonna park in the street, that's just a given, that's not, but I was talking about their specific vehicles, because it looked in earlier pictures like it was very common for them to be parking on the street instead of in front of the boat, even though everything does fit. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I do. And I guess my question later on would be to Stephen on that is that a separate issue for vehicles that are long time on the street?
Yeah.
Because again, that's not the boat's issue. That's if they decide to leave the boat in the driveway and not their other vehicles, and the other vehicles on the street would be the issue. Just the same as the trailer, I think, is an issue also.
There are
this
people
conditional use is for the boat specifically in the driveway.
And there are people that park on the street all over town, so, yeah. Okay, so you're thinking not even put that in there?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
And that's probably something that would be difficult at best to enforce.
Well, I know
And
it
again,
would be
then
a
we,
constant.
and that's kind of coming back to the point I was making, that we're going to continually have our code enforcement officer running around chasing his or her tail, as whoever it is at the time, saying, well, your boat's too big now, and then what do we do then? Or I've noticed your cars are out here. Well, no, they're not. And again, it's not specific to, and maybe I need to keep it specific to this, but again, I'm looking at the down the road consequences that could arise, and it turns into more than, at least from my perspective, putting myself in a department head's shoes or a compliance officer's shoes, more than I would want to try and digest, because they're getting visitors and phone calls about this, that, and the other continuously, and he's the proverbial army of one out there trying to do the job for 6,800 residents. And unfortunately, folks do not always do their diligence like these folks did and apply to the commission to get the conditional use permit, and they're spending time doing unnecessary enforcement. When if we had just followed the ordinance as it was intended, we wouldn't have to go down this road all the time. So
I think we've beat this horse to death.
I think we have too. I agree. So barring any further comments, last minute remarks, or concerns, I'm going to close discussion on this item and put it up for a motion. So hearing none, I'm going to entertain a motion on item D.
Mayor, I'd move to approve petition CUP 18-03, a request from Carla Harville for conditional use permit to allow for the parking of boat in the front yard at 1107 Cimarron Avenue, Aztec, New Mexico 87410.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover,
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
Aye.
Commissioner Sight,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay. Thank you, folks, for enduring that.
Marathon.
I appreciate the feedback, and I know we all probably learned a little bit tonight, so thank you very much for everybody that's attended and those folks that have come for land use hearings and enduring all the lengthy testimony. So let's move on to city manager, commissioners, and attorney reports. Mr. Mueller.
Attended the New Mexico Municipal League Conference last week with Commissioner Sipe, Commissioner Fry, and some other staff. Learned a lot. Good conference. And the only other thing, I'm going to search for my own outdoor recreation initiative this next 2 weeks. So I'll be absent for a couple of weeks.
I didn't know you were a mountain biker.
You don't, yeah.
I wish you was.
Bring back some meat.
Yes, but that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Sipe.
Well, I kind of have a long report, sorry.
Edit it.
I know. I'm trying. I'm looking. Just that the Municipal League Conference was really, it was very good, a lot of good information. Sally Burbridge presented at one of the workshops about leadership in times of crisis, speaking on the shooting that we had here in Aztec and the role of city leaders during that time. And she did a very good presentation. It was a really hard subject, very emotional subject, but she did a great job of presenting that. And then Stephen did a great job of presenting. As you know, we were chosen to be one of 5 cities that presented a small, some of our projects, and Stephen did a great job of putting together a presentation about our arterial and the prospects that opens up, and the difficulties that we have faced in the 10+ years that we've been trying to get this completed. So thank you, Stephen, for all your work on that. It was a great presentation. We also there was a couple workshops on technology and where that's taking us into the future, and one of the concerns is, as technology takes over jobs, what are people going to do to make a living in the future? And it's something to stop and kind of think about a little bit, that was, I think, a real eye-opener for me. A trivial fact was that, do you know that the iPhone 7 has as much processing capability as the entire NASA organization had in 1969? And we have it in our pockets now. So that's like,
Scary.
That was like amazing to me. But we also, there was a good presentation on the differences between baby boomers and millennials and how they look at things and how they process things. That was a good presentation also. I won't go into as much as I was going to go on that, but talking about how our workforce is decreasing because people are not having as many children anymore, if they have any. So, you know, that ratio is kind of growing. One of the things that they said was I think it was by 2030, there was going to be more adult diapers sold than baby diapers. So.
Oh, that's a pleasant thought.
That'd be scary.
Anyway, just another, and then at the business meeting, maybe it was 2050, maybe. But anyway, the resolution that Chief Hill's been working so hard on for safety for our schools, about bringing back retired police officers and them not having to compromise their para, and also supporting the legislation to make any bomb threats a felony. That passed with a unanimous support from the Municipal League to help push that forward through the legislature. So, Chief Hill, thank you very much for all the work that you did on that. One of the other issues was that Farmington did a presentation about slowing down the PNM wanting to close the power plants and the effects that for them to kind of take a step back and look. And I have to say that was one of the new resolutions that was presented in the business meeting. And like I said, Farmington City is the ones that brought that forward. And I have to say that it passed the Municipal League voting members with only one nay vote, and that was from a representative from Albuquerque. So I think that's going to be a good resolution too to watch, and hopefully that will go through and help out the situation with the closing of the power plant. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sipe. Mayor Pro Tem?
Ditto on everything Commissioner Sipe said, because I saw most of that. It's very good. There will be some legislative issues come up that we'll be very interested in that will affect our municipality. One being possible changes in the judicial court system that we'll want to watch and be prepared to deal with. Also, the proposals about elections all being combined on the November ballot. And Carla will be getting more information for us to understand the effect on the city of Aztec. Another important thing that's going to be going on in the legislature are tax changes, specifically sales tax from the internet. It's a very, very complex issue, and we're all being cheated out of tax money because of the purchases that are made online. So if they can ever figure that out, that could be a great boost to us in taxes that would come back to our community. So that would be important. Aztec Sparkles needs volunteers. If you're interested in participating, send me an email and I'll connect you with the right person. That's all.
Commissioner Randall?
No report.
Commissioner Lewis?
No report.
I will keep mine quick as well. Just some things coming up. I went to an ATOS meeting about a week and a half ago, and it was mentioned we are partnering with our Parks Department and ATOS with the Bureau of Land Management to work on a couple of local projects. It's 22nd of September. It's a week from Saturday. It's kind of a day of service sort of thing. I know that there's some folks that are going to work on the motocross track, and myself, along with several other folks from ATOS and maybe some community members, are going to be working on a little bit of arch cleanup just beyond the turnoff to Alien Trail, slightly north of that off of the road that goes up, I guess, before you turn off to go up to the trailhead for Alien, from 9 to 12. So if you have any questions or you want to get involved or you know somebody that might get involved, feel free to steer 'em my way, or maybe Wallace. You could get both of our emails, I believe. I'm on the city website, or I have cards out here. It's not hard to find me. Come up to the high school, whichever. I saw my first burning of Zozobra. I'm just going to leave that there. I had a great time. It was super fun. Quite a spectacle. I already mentioned the barbershop in 550, and I want to re-mention it just because we have got to get in that culture, in my opinion, to patronize our local businesses. If you can go to the hardware store, well, it's moved a little bit, but if you need a washer or something, check with them first. You know, that's just my own hope for us in the city. If you're hungry and you want to go grab lunch, you know, don't order Fuddruckers and run down there. You know, see if you can find an option locally, because we desperately need this income, and it helps grow business, and it helps. It's just a chain reaction sort of thing. Homecoming week is next week at the high school, so you're going to see some kids dressed kind of funny, looking like beach bums and that kind of stuff. Come out and support some of the stuff. The parade will be next Friday. Line the streets and cheer for the folks that are putting time into their costumes and parades. Our JROTC, for me personally, is going to be out there in the parade, and then cheer on the Aztec High School football team if you're so inclined next Friday night. And I was able to meet with Somos un Pueblos Unidos last week at the Sycamore Center in Farmington to hear concerns from our local Hispanic community and some of the things that are issues that they reoccurringly run into in their day-to-day lives here in San Juan County and specifically in Aztec. So it was very informative. I very much enjoyed getting to know some of the folks and hear some of their concerns and issues. And I've talked with the city manager, you know, and brought up a few things that we're looking into, minor things. And the most important thing I'm going to say is please register to vote if you are not registered. I believe early voting begins October 9th. So we're getting into that window to where if you're not registered, your voice will not be heard for another election cycle. So I don't care what your politics are, have your voice be heard. These elections have consequences, and you have to let yourself be heard. Win, lose, or draw. So that's all I have. Ms. Sunsecker, do you have a report?
I'm happy to join you all, and I do not have a report.
Thank you.
We're happy.
Yes, and we're very happy to have you. Thank you. Next is department head reports. Seeing none, I'm not going to give you a chance to change your mind. Move to adjourn.
I'll say yes, sir.
Second.
Parade Saturday.
Parade
Saturday?
The truck show.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's just the antique truck show.